All right, beautiful people. Let's make sure everything is squared away. Man, let me tell y'all something. I apologize for being late, man. I apologize for being late. I know this was supposed to start. It was supposed to start a long time ago. 12 p.m. and things motherfucking just I got some wrenches thrown in there, man. I just couldn't make it at 12 p.m. Then I was trying to make it at 7, but I was trying to adjust some things last minute, man. But we here. So, without further ado, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Doesn't matter what time it is. Just know today is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. Why? Because as always, God is good and He's good all the time. Dun. I technically don't need these headphones, so if you see me pop them off, it is what it is. But y'all, we getting into it. We getting into it, y'all. Chapter 13, The Blood at the Root. We gonna finish this motherfucking book, man. I'm gonna go live as often as I can until we finish this motherfucking book so we can move on. Okay? Y'all be patient with me, bear with me. It's gonna get better over here. It's gonna get better. Y'all probably can't even hear that. I'm over here playing the piano. I can hear it in my headphones, but I don't think it's transferring over. And that was the issue. I was trying to show y'all what I've been practicing, but I have to figure out how to get my FL Studio, my motherfucking piano linked to OBS because, like I said, I can hear. I can hear. But let's get into it. Why is my frames per second dropping? Baby, okay. Let me straighten something out. It is what it is. But let's go. Let's go. Cause I'm late already. I wanna get it going. So we in chapter 13. All right. Let's start. Do y'all want to see the book? I mean, it don't phase me none. I can hold it. I can not. You know, whatever y'all want. It don't matter. But anyways, I'll start holding it. Chapter 13, Driven to the Cook Stoves. Let's go. Many whites in Forsyth spent the days after the hangings defending Bill Reed. Remember, Bill Reed is one of the sheriffs in Forsyth County at this time, against criticism in the Atlanta papers and congratulating him on a job well done. He had presided over an execution with all the excitement of a country fair and had gone out of his way to ensure that Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel died, not behind a 15-foot blind, but in full view of the people. Y'all got to remember, they love making these spectacles, right? In Rome, they used to call them Roman, I want to call it Roman celebration, but I know that's not the term for it. Roman victory. I forget what it is, but it's basically when the Romans, like, they would win in whatever war, conquering whatever group of people or whatever, and they would literally parade all of their winnings, including people that they've conquered and now enslaved and owned and all this other stuff, right? They call them their booties. They would drag these people and parade them around and flaunt like, yes, we victorious over them. We motherfucking won. Roman triumph. That's what it's called. Roman triumph. And that's literally when the Romans, or not just the Romans, but they gave the name Roman triumph. But people, when they go into a community, a country, or whatever, they take over that country and they win, and now they parading them around, embarrassing them. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like on Game of Thrones when they was like, shame, shame, with Cersei. That Roman triumph is like the same way. It's a humiliation feat to be like, look, we conquer these niggas, we own these niggas, and I'm looking at them. They are property now. That's kind of what, during, I don't even want to just say slavery because I feel like it minimizes like the effect. Because these are things that happens now where in society, right, Like, people have been programmed to where, like, black people is at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, it's already set. Like, I ain't black, so if I call the cops on you, I know I'm gonna be victorious in this, even if I'm in the wrong. And usually that's how it works out. And so much ain't different here in 12, 13, when you got a sheriff, okay, a Georgia County sheriff, motherfucking, he's like, you know what? I'm all for killing these people. I don't want them dying, behind closed doors and whatnot. No, baby. I want this to be a spectacle. Because y'all remember, I encourage y'all, go back and listen to them previous chapters. Go read the previous chapters. This Bill Reed, this sheriff, he lied, didn't even protect these black men. And then came to find out that this joker was hanging out, going to church with the same jokers, these white boys that came up rolling through the jail ready to lynch these dudes before their execution date. But let's continue. Okay. He had presided over an execution with all the excitement of a county fair and had gone out of his way to ensure that Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel, two black young men, one of them is 16. At the moment, I'm drawing a blank. I feel like it was Oscar Daniels, if I'm not mistaken. Oscar Daniels is about 16 years old. Adultification of black children. Y'all. We're going to circle back around there. I got some content on here for that, too. But anyways, having filled the arena and sprung the trap with one swift blow of his hatchet, Reed was now one of the county's most celebrated heroes. Mind y'all, he's a hero based on lies. He lied and made it seem like, he saved these black individuals when that little posse, that mob of white dudes was trying to run up in the jail and kill them. He just let them on in there. It was the other sheriff, Sheriff Loomis, who tried to keep the peace. But because Bill Reed has seniority, you know how that goes. The politics, niggas is like, nigga, I was here before you. I'm going to claim what you did, even though I hid, okay? Because I was letting niggas do what they want to do. I'm not interfering. I go to church with these brothers. They want to lynch these niggers. Do so. That's how he was feeling. Bradley. Anyways, let's continue. Some Atlanta editors, however, railed against the sheriff for having arranged the spectacle in the first place. They should. And against Major Catron for having allowed it to continue, as they should. After going all the way to coming, the Constitution said, at an expense to the state, to guarantee against just this thing, the execution took place before the gaze of a multitude of about 5,000 people, specially gathered for the event. 5,000 people gathered to watch two black men. One is a child. According to New York laws, a minor. 16. And you got 5,000 people showed up for a lynching. But then here in 2025, it seem like, what was happening way back when ain't got no effect on now. You know what I'm saying? Most of them people done died out. I just want to say, if research has proven, right, that trauma, right, dealing with racial discrimination is something that is shared through biology, generation, I would like to think mob mentality, you going to these spectacles to watch people get lynched. It don't matter what their race is, background, demographics. You're going out your way to watch people get murdered for your entertainment. I like to think that that's also shared in DNA. You know what I'm saying? But I digress. Let's continue. I'm only on the first page. We got to keep going. But yeah, after going all the way to coming, the Constitution said, at an expense to the state, to guarantee against just this thing, the execution took place before the gaze of a multitude of about 5,000 people, specially gathered for the event. General William Obear, O-B-E-A-R, y'all know I'm going to spell it out because some of y'all that's alive related to some of these people, okay? General William Obear, O-B-E-A-R, head of the Georgia National Guard, criticized Catron for not delaying the execution until the fence could be rebuilt. When Governor Brown got wind of what had taken place, he blasted both the military commanders and Sheriff Reed himself, calling the Forsyth lawman one of Georgia's jellyfish sheriffs, too busy pandering for votes to ever stand up to a mob. That sounds about right, Mr. Governor or Mayor. Is this the mayor? No, that's the governor, Governor Brown. Such indignation is ironic coming from Brown, given that in only 3 years he would join Newt Moore's gang of kidnappers and help to lynch Leo Frank in the woods outside Marietta. I know some people that I served with from Marietta. It's crazy. Clearly, when Brown called on sheriffs like Reed to stop lynch mobs, he did not mean they should stand up to men like himself and Morris. Instead, what seems to have really offended Brown was Reed's lack of subtlety. After all, Knox and Daniel, who would have died that day whether or not their hangings were witnessed by thousands of cheering whites, and whether or not Reed turned the event into a 3-ring circus, at the heart of the controversy was not justice so much as decorum. That's the problem. Like, even when I hear people talking about the court systems, right? They're like, they put so much hope, and emphasis in the fairness that the court system bring. And they're like, oh, well, this is the closest that we have to bringing justice. First off, the court system's findings aren't even based on evidence. What it is, who has the most convincing narrative? That's how you win a court case. Man's way of processing information, our logic is so flawed, man. We look on the outside and we judge. When Jesus straight up said, he said, look further. He says, look at the heart. That's why Job, when he gave his inheritance to his family in a time where it's traditional to give it to the men, he gave it to his daughters. Where Jesus had, I believe it was Prophet Samuel, he said, go and look for a king, since these weirdos so thirsty to worship, and not thirsty to worship, but they so thirsty to be like the rest of the world and have a king. Prophet Samuel was looking at everybody but David. He was looking at these big stature men, like these big burly men. You look strong and big, and like you're dogmatic, and you just, everybody will like you. You're very outgoing. Looking at everything, and Jesus is like, nah, bro, look further. And he landed upon David, who by eyes did not fit the spot of a king. So that ought to show you, humans, the way that we process information is so flawed. That's why every time I got arrested and I got funneled through the criminal justice system, the prayer that I cried out immediately, Lord, you know my heart. You know what I have done and what I have not done. Man is incapable of bringing true justice. These niggas aren't fair. Forgive me for throwing in the niggas right now. But you, God, you're fair. I'd rather you judge me than you leave me in the hands of these weirdos. Because they got judgment like mine. Raggedy. Don't need it. Don't need it, Jesus. But let's continue. Clearly, when Brown called on sheriffs like Reed to stop lynch mobs, he did not mean they should stand up to men like himself and Morris. Instead, what seems to have really offended Brown was Reed's lack of subtlety. After all, Knox and Daniel would have died that day, whether or not their hangings were witnessed by thousands of cheering whites, and whether or not Reed turned the event into a 3-ring circus. At the heart of the controversy was not justice so much as decorum. The Constitution agreed that Reed's primary sin was his overt coquetting with the mob. Such buffoonery, the editors implied, was bad for Georgia's reputation and bad for its national aspirations. I'm over here burping, excuse me, y'all. An official may compromise with his own conscience when he stultifies himself. One critic concluded, but he has no right to indict the whole state. Give me a second, y'all. I'm going to stultifies. Stultifies. Come back. Get the definition of that word, you know what I'm saying? Add it to my lexicon. Even more problematic for Reed was a news story that appeared just a few days after the hangings. Forsyth was supposed to be returning to law and order after a solid month of excitement and getting on with the long-delayed work of the harvest. But on October 29th, the Atlanta Constitution reported that a white man named Dabner Elliott, a wealthy farmer of Forsyth County, had been attacked the previous night and today lies at the point of death with his skull crushed. And what did they do? Blame some Negroes like they did that girl, May Crow? I'm telling y'all, I really believe it was like an uncle. It's just somebody she know. According to motherfreaking statistics, y'all, you are more likely to be murdered, assaulted, raped, molested, all that, by someone you know. Over 90% of crime that takes place with a victim and a perpetrator, it usually occurs between parties who know each other. It's very rare. Not saying it's impossible, but it's very rare. The likelihood of you being attacked by a complete stranger. So if you've been harmed in any way, just think back on your life, buddy. Think back on it. I'm telling you. You'd be like, damn, most of the people that hurt me, I knew them niggas. Let's see what these comments saying. My bad, y'all. I suck at keeping up with comments. Thanks for reading this. Gonna catch it from chapter 1. Yes, ma'am. It sounded a little crunchy at first, but we in there now. Psh, to God be the glory. All right, let's continue. Oh, Jesus. People all over the county were disturbed by this news, not only because Elliott was a rich and well-liked planter. Now, that's how you get people bent up out of shape. When you start coming for wealthy white people, they be like, hold on. Stop the noise. They doing it to rich white people. None of us are safe. It's crazy how they the standard. But anyways, people all over the county were disturbed by this news, not only because Elliott was a rich and well-liked planter, but also because of where his unconscious body had been found and the modus operandi of his attacker. According to the Constitution, Deputy Sheriff Loomis went to the scene 7 miles north of Cumming this morning and is making an investigation. The assault occurred about 10 o'clock last night as Mr. Elliott was driving along a lonely section of the road in his buggy. He had been to Gainesville. I got family out there. Honestly, I just want to say, any black people, your family come from Sumter, motherfucking Andrews, Kingstree, South Carolina. It don't matter where you at in the United States. We all related. I just want to put that out there. We all kinfolk. You know, Gullah Geechee, all that. What's up? What's up, family? We all related. Plantation kin. Anyways. Where did I leave off at? Oh, he's been to Gainesville. He had been to Gainesville, but has been unable to throw any light on the affair, as he has been unconscious, apparently having been struck by a blunt instrument, the back of the skull being crushed. Damn. Bet you it's somebody he know. I'm telling you, it ain't nobody black. I can tell you that. While no one in Forsyth dared to say it publicly, there were obvious parallels between what had happened to Elliott and the attack on May Crow 2 months earlier. Interesting. And what y'all gonna do? Blame the 2 black dudes that y'all got locked up currently that y'all are wrongfully accusing for doing it? It's crazy. Or maybe it's like how the psychos be saying nowadays, all these white people, even some of these black people, all these non-black people, they be out here saying that black people commit majority of the crimes in the United States. So for all we know, these niggas probably think it was another black person. Even though niggas is living during a time where it's like, you could be murdered just for existing. But yeah, we're going to be out here harassing white people. No, good as well that y'all don't even pretend to acknowledge us as citizens, even though the 14th Amendment covers us and says that we are protected and given the same access to rights as everyone else, including citizens, even if you look at me as a non-citizen. But I digress. I bet you that's what they was like. It was a bunch of black peoples that did it. It's crazy when I be hearing that stuff because it's not even proportionate to the motherfucking population numbers out here. Sorry, y'all. I go on these tangents, but listen to this, right? I hear it all the time. The white, especially in these motherfucking news comments, it's crazy. The white people and the white adjacents, right? They be like, black people commit majority of the crime out here, especially violent crime. These niggas make it seem like we spirits or something. We just everywhere, you know? Everywhere, wreaking havoc. And it's like, okay, I'm not saying black people don't commit crime, because we do. But according to statistics, as a person, you know, I don't even like throwing that. I hate that line when people be like, as a female, as a doctor, so I'm just not going to say it. Believe me when I tell you, okay, in the U.S., there are about 330 million people. Statistics says from every group of people, about, now this is a safe number, about 1% of each group of people, about 1% of their population participates in crime, right? 1% of every group. That's the baseline. So, there's about 330 million people in the United States, right? Look it up. Black people only make up about 14% of the U.S. population. So 14% of 330 million, I want to say is about 40, we'll say about 40 million. Let's do the numbers. We'll do it together. I got my phone right here so y'all can see I ain't doing no weirdo stuff. Oh, I can't even turn it. What am I doing? I have a calculator on my motherfucking computer. Duh. We taking a break, y'all, because we're all about education here. Get this out of here. I was, you probably can't hear anything, but I was over here trying to get into my music producing bag, but get this out of here. We looking for a calculator. Calculator. Bro, give me my calculator. Y'all can't see it. Now you can see it. 330 million people. Actually, you know, because I love educating and I love showing people better than I could tell them. Because people would be like, where do you get this 330 million people from? I'll show you. U.S. population. So y'all can see I ain't making this up. This is research, okay? I don't like that AI overview bullcrap. Right here. 343. That's what it says. 343. Okay. It was about 330 when I looked this up about 5 years ago because I did a research paper for my master's. Because I got all my degree in criminal justice. So this is why I can sit here and talk about it. So we're going to say about 330. Actually, we're going to use the numbers that they gave us. 343. 000 000 0. That is 343 million people. Then we're going to multiply that by 14%. So that is 0.14. That is how many black people, roughly, live in the United States. Now you got to take consideration. Out of about 48 million black people, let's take into consideration these nuances. We got a geriatric community. I like to inform y'all, there's this age out of crime concept that exists. Yeah, it's a real thing. Google it. Age out of crime. Where it basically says that at some point, you grow up and you mature out of crime. You get up out of it. The geriatric community, you probably got onesie-twosies out here that's still gangbanging, shooting it up, you know, doing all that wild stuff, criminal activities. But for the most part, our old people are regular old people. Them niggas ain't They doing crime, but it's like everybody else. They riding around without their seatbelt. You know what I'm saying? They drink a little drink, get behind the wheel. They got a little tipsy, you know. I done seen a couple of grandmas, 60 plus, riding around in their car smoking weed. So I ain't saying they don't commit no crime, but come on. So you got out of 48 million people, you got the geriatric community. Then it breaks up into children, women, adult males. Then you have to take it attrition. You got death, incarceration, the military. So the amount of black people that could potentially commit crime in the United States is way less than what is presented. So 48. But even if we did what the numbers say, and we multiplied 48 million people times, because remember, we said roughly about 1% of the U.S. population engage in crime. So about 48 million people times 1%. This is how many people roughly in the black community committing crimes. Barely 500,000 people out of 48 million. Y'all remember this. Remember this, okay? Remember this. This is black people committing crimes. Now, y'all remember 343 million people in the United States. According to the census, 343 million people in the United States, right? But 60% of that is white. So now we multiply 343 million times 60% to get how many white people live in the United States. 205,000. Excuse me, 205,000. 205.8 million people live in the United States that are classified as white. And remember, 1%, it is estimated that about 1% of every group participates in crime. So if white people make up over 205 million people in the United States, where black people is only 48 million, and then you still take into consideration attrition, you know, the incarcerated, those is the military, the deceased, you know what I'm saying? Maybe some of these disabled folk, the geriatric community, infants. You got about 2 million people, white people, committing crimes. 1% of the black population that's supposedly out here puts us less than 500,000 black people expected to be committing crimes. White people, over 2 million. So for people to be out here saying black people commit most of the crimes, it's not even possible by the number. You see what I'm saying? On top of the fact, not only does like our population numbers don't even match up, but how can black people be out here committing crimes in communities that they're not living in? I've been told by weirdos that's like, black people committing crimes everywhere. How? There's communities that are literally damn near 99% white. Ain't no color person coming up in there committing no crime. Crime is actually based on proximity. Where you got people out here to talk about a bunch of black people terrorizing Asian people, which is crazy because if you listen to the basketball community, they got a bunch of Filipinos coming in the seat talking about nigga this, nigga that, nigga, wanna act black and stuff. But then they hide behind the little Asian crime stuff where it's like, oh my goodness, the black people terrorizing us Asians. You wanna we or are we enemies? I mean, come on. Let's not forget that Korean lady that murdered that 15-year-old girl in the 90s. I believe her last name is Harlan's. And little girl was just trying to buy orange juice. You know what I'm saying? But you got people out here who sit here and be like, black people committing all the crimes. How? That don't even match by the numbers, you know. We can't commit all the crimes. Not compared to white people. There's just more of y'all than us. Based on statistics, then we ain't even everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Y'all outnumber us. And crime is based on proximity. So for all the people that be like, black people be terrorizing us, well, when you got a bunch of Asian people moving into the United States, I mean, look where they live. They usually don't live too far from Negroes. So obviously, you're going to end up in some quarrels amongst Negroes. Why? Because you live in close proximity to them. If you move your tail out to where the white people are, then that's where your problems will come from. You hear what I'm saying? Your direct immediate problems. But let's continue. Man, that's wow. It's literally simple. Obvious math, but yet we are all easily deceived. We must do yes, ma'am. Easy math. And although that math kind of like doesn't paint the full picture, it still ignores some nuances. It shows you that there's no legitimacy in any of the things that we say. We like committing our crimes. It's just, no. We're just pervasively painted as criminals. This goes back as far as forever. But let's continue, because I'm trying to finish this. All right, let's see. Damn, I got some pages to read. All right. I'm going to try to get through several pages before stopping a chit-chat. But let's go. Even more problematic for Reed was a news story that appeared just a few days ago after the hangings. Forsyth was supposed to be returning to law and order after a solid month of excitement and getting on with the long-delayed work of the harvest. But on October 29th, the Atlanta Constitution reported that a white man named Dabner Elliott, a wealthy farmer of Forsyth County, had been attacked the previous night and today lies at the point of death with his skull crushed. People all over the county were disturbed by this news, not only because Elliott was rich and well-liked planner, but also because of where his unconscious body had been found and the modus operandi of his attacker. Modus operandi is basically like, it's the same thing, that MO. Like, this is, if we was to lay out, this nigga's rap sheet, this is fitting for him, this is his resume. That's basically modus operandi in simple terms. Deputy Sheriff Loomis, I'm over here looking for my water. I'm going to have to text my wife. I'm thirsty. Give me a second, y'all. I'm thirsty. And my stomach growling. I'm hungry. It's almost 8 o'clock. My water. I gotta let her know I'm recording because we were definitely in bed. So I don't want to come in here all indecent. All right, let's continue. Deputy Sheriff Loomis went to the scene 7 miles north of Cumming this morning and is making an investigation. The assault occurred about 10 o'clock last night as Mr. Elliott was driving along a lonely section of the road in his buggy. He had been to Gainesville. Give me a second. Yes, ma'am. He had been to Gainesville, but he has been unable to throw any light on the affair as he has been unconscious, apparently having been struck by a blunt instrument, the back of the head being crushed. While no one in Forsyth dared to say it publicly, there was obvious parallels between what had happened to Elliott and the attack on May Crow 2 months earlier. Whoever appeared out of the darkness had waylaid his buggy 7 miles north of Cumming. What the heck is waylaid? It's another word for me to circle and come back later. But he had waylaid his buggy 7 miles north of Cumming, and soon after, he re-entered the county from Gainesville, which is to say, somewhere near the sleepy little crossroads village of Oscarville. Now, for those who don't know what Oscarville is what the city, well, it's not even a city, it's a lake. But Oscarville is what is now currently Lake Lanier. They flooded Oscarville and turned it into Lake Lanier, which Oscarville was a prominent black community in the early 1900s. Around this time is about 1912-ish. But let's continue. And Elliot's attacker had left the same condition as Crow, dragged into the woods beside the road, unconscious and suffering from grave head injuries. When doctors announced that Elliot had died from his wounds, few whites were willing to even consider the possibility that someone other than a vengeful black assailant had killed Dabner Elliot. Few whites were willing to consider it. Racial biases and other biases supposedly don't exist. But let's continue. I ain't trying to hold y'all up. Thank you, my sweetness. When doctors announced that Elliot had died from his wounds, few whites were willing to even consider the possibility that someone other than a vengeful black assailant had killed Dabner Elliot, presumably in retaliation for the deaths of Edward. Oh my gosh, they just think black people just be out here ready to wreak havoc. Earlier, and they was talking about in this book, mind you, this is the early 1900s, like 1910, 1911, 1912. They was talking about race wars. This is why the white, they was saying like, this is why the white people were just so on edge, because they was like, oh my goodness, May Crow died. It's the black people. They coming to get us and to pay us back for all the stuff that we did. The race wars are coming, literally. And here we are in 2026. And these niggas still talking about race wars. Any damn happen. But let's continue. When doctors announced that Elliot had died from his wounds, few whites were willing to even consider the possibility that someone other than an individual black assailant had killed Dabner Elliot, presumably in retaliation for the deaths of Edwards, Knox, and Daniel. But privately, some people must have shaken their heads at the fact that Elliot had died in the exact same fashion as May Crow, and in almost the exact same place, despite the fact that Crow's alleged murderers were now dead and the entire black population of Oscarville had been banished. Literally exiled, okay? Exposed. Banished across the county line. Cummings' leaders were eager to put the season of death and violence behind them, and they clearly hoped that the double hanging had brought an end to Forsyth's troubles. Nah, bro. Y'all just killed two black dudes for no reason. The only problem, there was still a murderer lurking somewhere in the woods of Oscarville. Yeah. And what you gonna do? Kill all the black people? You still gonna have motherfucking white bodies turning up dead. Because what? It ain't Negroes killing them. Stupid. Anyways. Still grieving for Oscar, Ernest, and Jane's husband, Rob, and no doubt haunted by the fact that Jane's testimony had helped send her brother and cousin to their graves. Now, I know some people be like, what? She testified against her cousin? Y'all got to remember, this is during a time where black people didn't even get an opportunity to testify. So if you were given an opportunity to testify in the courts, it was encouraged, coerced, more to speak, that you said what was beneficial to the prosecutor because you could end up murdered, okay? It's either you say nothing or you be on the side of the prosecutor. And because you got a bunch of black dudes accused of killing a white girl, if she said anything in opposition to that, saying like, they didn't do it, she was going to be murdered too. Now, I know some people like, that was me, I was stuck to the toes and blah, 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 blah. That sounds nice and everything. But we ain't her. I don't know what it's like being in her shoes. I would like to think that I would have done the opposite. I don't know. But she definitely did testify, which ultimately ended up getting her family murdered. And this is something that she had to live with to the day she died. So, no shade to her. Anyways. After Jane's testimony had helped send her brother and her cousin to the graves, Buck Daniels' family spent their first days on the road in one of the shanty towns that had sprung up on the western outskirts of Gainesville, the seat of Hall County. As a station on the rail line that ran south to Atlanta and north all the way to Boston, Gainesville had long been a magnet for rural blacks. Rural. For some reason, they associate city with Negroes. Like, we don't be out in the boondocks in the hill country. But anyways, who steadily migrated from farmland to cities after emancipation. Oh, would you look at that? That's how you get all these niggas in the city, huh? Anyways, in the previous 40 years, Gainesville's African-American population had grown from 60 black residents in 1870 to more than 1,600 in 1910. People of color made up almost a third of the city's population in the fall of 1912, before hundreds of Forsyth refugees began appearing on the streets of Gainesville. Even the more tolerant whites raised an eyebrow at the sheer volume of the migration. Sounds about right, which is exactly what they're doing now, but with Ukrainians. It's just something about bigots and people that's different from them that it's just make them nuts. Let's continue. People of color made almost a third of the city's population in the fall of 1912, before hundreds of Forsyth refugees began appearing on the streets of Gainesville. Even more tolerant whites raised an eyebrow at the sheer volume of the migration. And the Atlanta Constitution sounded a note of alarm, declaring that Gainesville is being invaded as a haven of refugees. Mind you, I try not to stop. Let me finish this. The Negro sections have been flooded with safety-seeking Negroes, and scores of shanties and dwelling houses shelter as many as 6 or more families. It's interesting because one of the things that are made fun of about Latinos and even Asian immigrants that are starting to migrate over here, if you pay attention in the cities, it's about the same thing, about 6 or more families piled in what looks to be like an apartment. I'm in Rochester, New York, and I live off of Dewey Avenue. This is like immigrant central. You could see people from Sudan. You could see people from Palestine. You could see people from motherfucking Ukraine. You could see Filipinos, Vietnamese. Baby, we even got a refugee little shelter building for them to come to when they land here, right there on Lexington. But you let people tell it. This whole area is just poor and black. It's mad poor white people here too. Welfare having white people. But they talk about crime, black. There's like this pervasiveness of crime and black. And it's crazy because like even here, it referred to black people moving from one location in the U.S. to another as migration. How many of y'all have heard people interchangeably say immigrants, migrants, immigration, migration, as if they are synonymous? They're not. This is why I started my platform to help further education, because I'm tired of the pervasiveness of stupid. Okay. Immigration. It requires you to be a foreigner, as in you are not native to that land. You could even be undocumented, but you're unforeign. You're not native. Migration, is a person who does the same thing as an immigrant when they're immigrating. The only difference is that they're native. They're a citizen. Usually, immigrants, obviously they're foreigners, but usually they're undocumented. So, that's why they're referred to as an immigrant. But interchangeably saying immigrants, migrants, even when they're not the same, it causes confusion. And I personally think it's intentional, what they call obfuscation. You know, when people literally, intentionally use ambiguous terminology in a way to hinder your understanding. It's to confuse you. So it just makes you anti-migrants, anti-immigrants, because at the end of the day, the people at the top ain't got to do squat for the poor people at the bottom. And if you think that immigrants and migrants are the same people, instead of looking at them as, or excuse me, if you look at immigrants and migrants as different people instead of as the same, because y'all are, you're both seeking better work, you want to live in a safe environment, you want to bring up your children in a safe environment, you want to be able to send them off to a decent enough school where they can acquire a legitimate education, and that way they can move up in the social realm and all this wonderful jazz. Yes, everybody wants that. Everybody. But the divide and conquer, hey, you can achieve it only if you maintain these people out. You let these people in, you can't get it. And then now it's like immigrant, migrant. I even have a black uncle. I ain't gonna go too deep into it because I've done talked about this previously on other videos. But this dude, 87 years old Negro from down south. He from South Carolina. And when me and him was talking, this nigga had the audacity. He made me realize, like, I see why a lot of, some of the younger black generation of black people have this, like blanket of self-hate just all over them. Just all over them. This nigga started talking about black people migrated to beautiful cities like Rochester, which was so beautiful in the 1950s and 60s. When you look at it, it was just heavy industrial. People had decent enough jobs, but it wasn't so ran down like now. Like over time, 30 years from now, you'll look out in the community and be like, damn, Atlanta, Georgia used to be pretty in 2025. Now in 2057, it looks like, yeah, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Why? Because the earth is dying. Jesus is soon to return, okay? This is going to get worse. But this nigga sat there and said, yeah, all them black people started migrating to Rochester, and just, it made it ugly. They brought their old southern ways with them, talking about how they was hanging clothesline outside, not cutting the grass, and they depreciated the property value. This is an 87-year-old black man from South Carolina. Uncle Ruckus epitomized, okay? And my family, married to my great aunt, and I just looked at this man like, damn, if you look at us like that, how could I be, how could I feel some type of way about people who ain't even us looking at us like that? You look at us like that. Do you think you're not black, sir? That's what I was thinking. But anyways, let's continue. Where did I leave? Migrated. I encourage us to get educated on migration and immigration. Immigration and migration is the same thing. You got people going to a new location, looking for a better place of, work, life, pursuit of happiness, all that wonderful jazz. The only difference is one's native to that location, the other one's a foreigner. That's the only difference. And I encourage y'all because I have to show it, and I'm going to read. I swear I'm going to read like 5 pages straight without stopping. But I want to show y'all because I constantly tell people about this. And like I told you, I like to show people because I could show you better than I could tell you. I could show you better than I could tell you. So I want you to see, because niggas think I be lying when I tell them that people think that immigrants ain't covered by, they don't have any rights, not according to the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment addresses many aspects of citizenship and the rights of citizens. The most commonly used and frequently litigated, equal protection of the laws. That's why it's constantly litigated, because niggas want to be like, no, nobody has equal protection of the laws except citizens. But that's just not true. Okay, I'm just going to read the first section, and then we're going to get back to the reading, because this is what I do, man. Educate. All persons born or naturalized. Now, one thing I will tell you, when it comes to legal terms, language matters. I encourage you to look up words so you can know what they mean in its entirety, because in the legal realm, when they put a word there, that word is intentionally there, and it has a specific meaning. There may be some wiggle room in interpretation, but it has a specific meaning. They didn't put naturalized for no reason. For those who don't know, naturalized could be those that are undocumented but has permission to be here. For example, the Braceros program of, I believe it was 19. Actually, it was around the time that what was taking place, 1912. It was somewhere between 1912 and 1920 when the United States of America and Mexico had an agreement because of majority of American men was in these wars and stuff. They needed bodies over here to work. Yeah. So what they did, they was like, Mexico, we need an agreement. Send me some of your bodies because I got a bunch of them that's in war right now. We need people to work these farms. You know what I'm saying? We need people to work these manufacturing buildings or these businesses. We need some bodies. All right. We'll provide them room, board. You know what I'm saying? We'll give them, proper access to resources and services and whatever they need. We'll take care of them. And so Mexico was like, all right, you'll take care of them. Here's my people. Obviously, the United States did not do what they said they were going to do, which is why in 2026, we still see that there's some tension between Mexico and the U.S. because the U.S. leadership is just a bunch of liars. They lie, deceive, manipulate, okay? But that's why, one of the reasons why we have a very high influx of Latino, especially Mexicans here. We literally had programs with Mexico that allowed their people to come here, and they didn't even have to be documented. That's why it's not uncommon for you to go into these cities, or excuse me, these major major cities, these towns that are very rural, and you see a bunch of Mexicans working there in the farm life. They convince you that they don't have rights though because they want that free labor. They want to suck them dry, use them for all that, all that they offer, all that they provide. And then when it comes time to providing them that compensation that they promise, it's like, you are an undocumented so-and-so. You're an immigrant. Get the freak out of here. We don't care about y'all. Look at our news. All these people, you got the Candace Owens and the Tucker Carlsons and convincing you, F these niggas, okay? It's all about us first. So, I just want to say, and Mexico ain't the only country they did it with. The United States did it with China. They did it with the Vietnamese. They did it with the Japanese. They had all type of agreements where they send us your people because we need some bodies. And then they come here, and then they kick them out, and they treat them like crap. Look at the Immigration Act of 1882. People wonder why the Asian population is so tiny in the United States. Well, it was actually it was booming once upon a time. And then, I don't know, our government officials was like, you know what? We need property. We want government-owned property. We want property for ourselves, and I can't buy it with these Asian people buying it. So we're going to change legislation. Literally. I forget the man's name now, but I can show you better than I could tell you. PBS Origins. Immigration Act of 1882. Bro. Asian. Look at this. Chinese Exclusion Act. They had the Seawards Treaty. They had all types of treaties. And this guy, Robert Chang. Chang.
Chang-Ping was
Che Chang-Ping is the man's name. He had dual citizenship. He was a Chinese citizen and a citizen here. This man, I encourage y'all. I'm going to leave this link in the description below, but watch this. This man was a citizen. He had businesses here. He had property and assets here. From the right of a pen, they changed the law. And he fought. He went to court. Because they was like, sir, you got to get up out of here. We don't acknowledge immigrant or Chinese people as citizens. And he was like, hold on, look at my documentation. I'm a citizen. They said, void, rip, get up out of here. Che Chan Ping was kicked out. You see, 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, kicked that man out, and every other Asian that was motherfucker that they could get a hold of. And then they prohibited them. They started expanding it. They went even further. That they even started trickling down into Caribbean islands. That's why the Haitians was even sucked up into that. You see what I'm saying? The Caribbean folk. They're like, nah, bro, we don't want none of you. None of you. It wasn't until 1943 when these legislations were repealed. And then Asians were started to be allowed back into the United States. But they didn't retroactively compensate them people for none of the land, assets, money, and stuff that they lost. But I held y'all long enough, y'all. I told y'all I gotta do better. I'm just trying to educate y'all. But make sure y'all check the link below because they're gonna be it. They ain't gonna be it. Let's see, where did I leave off? Still grieving for Oscar, Ernest and Jane's husband. Robin, no doubt, haunted by the fact that Jane's testimony had helped send her brother and cousin to their graves. Buck Daniels' family spent their first days on the road in one of the shanty towns that had sprung up on the western outskirts of Gainesville. The seat of Hall County. As a station on the rail line that ran south to Atlanta and north all the way to Boston, Gainesville had long been a magnet for rural blacks who steadily migrated from farmland to cities after emancipation. In the previous 40 years, Gainesville African-American population had grown from 60 black residents in 1870 to more than 1,600 in 1910. People of color made up almost a third of the city's population. That is 0.33, and continue, percent. Now, if you think I'm lying, you know what I'm saying? Oh my gosh, I done stopped again, y'all. I'm supposed to be reading. I'm a little math nerd, though. I loved math when I was in grade school. 0.333. I butchered it a little bit, but y'all get what I'm saying, okay? You get what I'm saying. So we made up about 33% at this time. That's what they saying. Made up a third. People of color made up almost a third of the city's population in the fall of 1912 before hundreds of Forsyth refugees began appearing on the streets of Gainesville. Sounds like what we're in now. Even the more tolerant whites raised an eyebrow at the sheer volume of the migration, and the Atlanta Constitution sounded a note of alarm declaring that Gainesville is being invaded as a haven for refugee. The Negro sections have been flooded with safety-seeking Negroes, and scores of shanties and dwelling houses shelter as many as 6 or more families. Now, I did realize that I did not read this. But all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So it's saying whether you are born here, you're documented, or you're just temporarily here for work, and you're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which basically means, like, if you are here, baby, you are under that jurisdiction, because if you commit a crime in the United States, you're going to be held by the United States federal government, and then it's just going to shrink down to the micro level. So that state, that city, that county, that, you know what I'm saying, it's going to zoom in, but you fall under their jurisdiction. So it's saying whether you're born here or you've acquired some type of, ability to be here. You here in the United States, you're subjected to the jurisdiction thereof. You're a citizen of the United States and of that state wherein you reside. So you fall under the jurisdiction of the United States federal government, and you fall under the jurisdiction of that state that you in, and that city, that town, that village. You see what I'm saying? No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge, which is hinder, prevent, the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So even if you try to say naturalized doesn't apply to people who aren't documented because you're ignorant, that's fine. Think that. But then it explicitly states, nor shall any state deprive any person. It didn't say just citizens. It didn't say those that born or naturalized. It says deprive any person. Any. Language matters, man. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. If you don't know what due process of law is, that basically means that they can't motherfucking hinder your life, hinder your freedom, take your property, or hinder your property without taking you to court and going through the constitutionally ordained process of the law. That's basically what that's saying. Nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction, the equal protection of law. There it goes again. Any person. It's interesting. Any person. Language matters. Language matters. According to the 14th Amendment, everybody has equal rights to the Constitution, whether you was born here, motherfucking you just so happen to get some papers here, or nigga, you ain't got squat here, you just here. Okay? You covered. But let's continue. I'm getting hungry. Whenever the Daniel family finally made it to town, they entered a world radically different from the sleepy farms and sharecroppers shacks out in Oscarville. Y'all know my daddy was a sharecropper? My daddy was born in 1962. He is currently 63 years old, and he was a sharecropper from the age, he said, from like 4 to like, I think it was when, I want to say like 13. I forget. But to this day, my daddy hates motherfucking farming because of the trauma associated with sharecropping. So when niggas try to be like, the sharecropping ended, blah, 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 there's no person alive that was a sharecropper. My daddy's yet alive, okay? And will be for another 40 to 50 years. But let's continue. In 1912, Gainesville was a frequent holiday destination for affluent tourists seeking an escape to the cool mountain air of North Georgia. With its grand hotels, bustling railway station, and tourists in gleaming automobiles, the city employed a whole class of African-American nannies. Oh, here go the entry-level positions. Cooks, drivers, and butlers. All the stuff that requires motherfucking tipping. Have y'all looked into the history of tipping? It started with Negroes in position like this. Lord have mercy. Anyways, who lived relatively stable lives compared to the dirt poor laborers of Forsyth, which is farmers. Farmers still have an active stigma to this day. With the completion of the Dunlap hydroelectric dam in 1908, Gainesville had become the first city south of Baltimore whose sidewalks were lined with electric With the completion of the Dunlap hydroelectric dam in 1908, Gainesville had become the first city south of Baltimore whose sidewalks were lined with electric street lamps. As they walked those glowing city blocks, Buck and Katie must have recognized in the blur of unknown faces at least a few familiar ones from other families who had come out of Forsyth, as the refugees put it. Refugees is all the people that were banished, expulsed from Forsyth. So all the black people. Remind you, if you go back, these people were met with firearms and fires at their residence to get them up out of there. Met with violence. But let's continue. It was not just the poor and landless who had been forced out, but people from all walks of life. Field hands and sharecroppers like the Daniel clan, as well as ministers, church folk, land-owning black planters, and educated black school teachers, the Sedidis. Not long after their arrival, many of these families began to make their mark on Hall County. Among them were the sons and daughters of Levi and Elizabeth Greenlee, who would go on to found the Greenlee Funeral Home, a landmark in Gainesville for decades and one of the most successful black-owned businesses in North Georgia. I wonder if that still applies today. There was Bird Oliver, who met and married young Beulah Rucker shortly after he settled in Hall and helped her found a Tuskegee-style school for African Americans called the State Industrial and High School with educated blacks in North Georgia for more than 40 years. So this is when they're talking about black people, when they talk about how black people literally created their own education system because it wasn't afforded to us. The young lady's name is Beulah Tucker. I'm saying young lady, I don't know. And her husband, Berger Oliver, found a Tuskegee-style school for African Americans called the State Industrial and High School, which educated blacks in North Georgia for more than 40 years. And there were children like the 14-year-old Willie Bryant, who was old enough to remember the attacks of the mobs, but young enough to quickly adapt to his new life in the city. By 1920, Bryant was working a union job for the Southern Railway and was well on his way to joining Gainesville black middle class. Census records show that, like Bryant, many other Forsyth refugees started over in Hall, still struggling to bear the crushing burdens of segregation, but with at least a taste of the electrified, industrialized 20th century that Charlie Harris had worked so hard to bring to coming. So this is when black people started to adapt, right? They moved forcefully from the rural parts of Georgia, and they started migrating to these more cities with the industrial boom, and they were adapting to the new environment for survival purposes. Sounds about right. Even Jane Daniels seemed to have found some happiness across the river. After she was freed from the Fulton Tower, Jane made her way back north and eventually rejoined her family in Gainesville. By 1913, she had found work as a laundress for one of the rich families in town and had met a young man named William Butler, who, with his panel truck, his uniform, and his job as a driver for the Gainesville Ice Company, must have struck her as a real city boy. Excuse me, y'all. Within months, Will Butler proposed to the girl he called Janie. On February 5th, 1914, the two were married, and they set up a house in the heart of Gainesville black community at 9 Atlanta Street. Of other families who fled in other directions, the written traces are faint. In many cases, old stories are all that's left of their journeys down the dusty red roads leading out of Forsyth. That's black people. When it comes to like our history, there's a lot of nuances that goes unnoticed because over time, you losing people. There's through attrition, death, incarceration. Maybe you move, and there's just that loss of like storytelling. That's why we really need to bring back storytelling. And I'm not talking about this garbage that we've been seeing on social media. No, I'm talking about where families literally talk what had happened from their perspectives. Like, yeah, you're going to get different versions from different people, but that's how you not only keep information going, but that's how you keep your people, informed for several generations. But let's continue. Allen Collins was 8 years old the night his father and mother, George and Katie, loaded him and his brother Clarence into the back of a wagon, covered the boys with an old quilt, and drove out of Forsyth as fast as their mule could go. With no destination other than the county line, they headed first toward Canton in neighboring Cherokee County and eventually to the little town of Tate, 20 miles northwest. Now, I know a lot of people. I told you I wouldn't even stop. I'm trying to make this quick. Cherokee is very commonly seen amongst black Negroes in our DNA. I do believe in the concept that there are a bunch of Negroes currently who have been misclassified as black and potentially were Native American, indigenous folk, etc. However, one of the largest slave-owning Native American groups were Cherokees. And if you know anything about white people in slavery, you got forced sex and you got consensual sex. And then there's the mixing. So when black people be like, I'm Cherokee Indian, I think it's nuts that people be so quick to discredit them. And it's like, baby, that person's likelihood of being Native American is just as high as your likelihood of being part white. Most people don't even believe me when I tell them that I'm white. My mama is biracial. My mama is half white. Her mama white, her daddy black. And when you look at my siblings, some of us light, some of us dark. It is what it is. Let's continue. Once there, George Collins was either determined or lucky enough to get an appointment with Mr. Samuel Tate, owner of the town's sole industry, the Georgia Marble Company. Just as the rich and the famous protected blacks were working their mills, washed their clothes, and cooked their meals, Sam Tate quickly became both an employer and a guardian of the Collins family. Aww. Is that what they call the white savior? We'll continue. Please disregard that. I just spoke my thought. Should keep it to myself. By all accounts, the colonel brought his power to bear quickly and fiercely on anyone who dared to threaten the black workers who were vital to the operation of his pink marble quarries. I know that's right. You better fight for your motherfucking your employees. Because you're going to be poor if you ain't got them. Poor blacks like the Collins family left with only what they could carry. But more affluent families refused to simply abandon their property, holding out hope that they might return or at the very least sell for something close to fair market value. As the largest black landowners in the county, Joseph and Eliza Kellogg were reluctant to sell the 200 acres they had accumulated near Sawney Mountain. 200 acres. Joseph and Eliza Kellogg, black landowners. 200 acres, baby. Sawney Mountain, or even the small lot that they own on the town square in Cumming. While they had no choice but to flee the mobs before they headed south to Marietta, Kellogg borrowed money from some of his white neighbors using the deeds to his land as collateral. The benefits were twofold. First, the loans gave Kellogg enough money to support his extended family during the exile, which he still hoped would be temporary. And second, those who lent money to Kellogg now had good reason to look after his property, farm equipment, and outbuildings while he was gone, since they would take possession if the debts were unpaid. Interesting. This also meant, of course, that Joseph and Eliza Kellogg's white neighbors had a vested interest in keeping them away. Whether they joined, opposed, or were indifferent to the raids of Forsyth's night routers, for many whites, the misfortune of black property owners became a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Oh, man, it sounds like they was like, oh, my goodness, guys, we can accumulate some land and property here for the low. Even though we ain't kicked them out, they still about it. That's what it sounds like. Let's go. The early years of the new century had been a sharp rise in the value of real estate in the foothills. As the introduction of chemical fertilizers and mechanized, I don't know why I just butchered that word, and mechanized agriculture turned what had always been a marginal region into more productive and more valuable farmland. Spikes in land values and crop yields meant that as the new century entered its second decade, Joseph Kellogg's large spread near Sawney Mountain came to seem both highly attractive to landless whites and terribly far out of reach. Interesting. Sawney Mountain sounds pretty. I'm going to look that up in a little bit. I got to keep reading, though. We can't stop too much. In a market that was making landowners richer and richer, poor whites in Forsyth must have realized that if they were going to climb up from the bottom of the economic ladder, something would add to that give. So they're going to take people's stuff? Goodness gracious. Is this how poor white people got into position? Sounds about right. And in the last quarter of 1912, something finally did, when one black family after another was forced at gunpoint to pack up their belongings and leave. As even the proudest, most prosperous black man, like Joseph Kellogg, gave in to the threats, Forsyth County suddenly became, for the first time in living memory, a buyer's market. Damn. That's some exploitation to the max. We got a bunch of poor white people that's like, you know what? I want a piece of the pie. Get up out of here, niggas. And these be the same ones who descendants nowadays be like, my people work hard for what they had. I mean, it do take some labor to walk up on somebody's motherfucking porch, put a gun to their motherfucking head, and tell them get off of their own property for your own benefit. That takes some labor, all right. Even peaceful whites understood that as the violence escalated, Lord have mercy. Every time you stop, you're dropping. I appreciate it, ma'am. I'm trying to get through it. That's why I ain't done yet. I talk too much. All right, shut up. Even peaceful whites understood that as the violence escalated, and as more and more and more of the black community scattered, black owners might be tempted by lowball offers. Lord have mercy. That sounds about right. I went through some stuff when my wife and I bought our house, but I'm going to say that for another day. We're going to continue. But it'd be some weird stuff happening, okay? When you're a part of the disenfranchised group and niggas don't really be wanting your kind in their neighborhood. It's crazy. One owner in Forsyth placed an ad in the Atlanta Constitution offering for sale 200 acres in Forsyth County and a business corner lot in Cumming, 100 times 175 on Public Square. This description matches the 200 acres in town lot on which Joseph Kellogg paid taxes in 1912. Lord have mercy. See this? Y'all heard about that lady? I think she like 91 years old. Oh my. I know I said I wasn't going to stop, but this makes me think of this lady. I don't like this whole tax thing. Ooh. Y'all heard about that lady? She like 91 years old. I think she was in Texas, but she got her property sold up under her for some unpaid property taxes. 91-year-old woman, house sold, unpaid property taxes. She black too. Bruh. Look at this house. No, nigga. I want to see the lady house, bro. It's behind this fat head dude. Bro, if you don't, what are you doing? Don't you play the video. But anyways, yes, I'm going to scroll.
A 91-year-old Delaware County woman is facing eviction now.
Shut your mouth, bro. This ain't that. We ain't on that. I could read. Pennsylvania. Okay. We're going to skip. The lady is hospitalized, basically. And during COVID, here it is. Like most old people, she was afraid to leave her home, so she didn't pay her property taxes. And whatever she did pay, she started to pay stuff, but they never paid the back stuff, right? So it didn't go into arrears. So they was just like, we about to put a tax lien on your house. Now, this is the funky thing about tax liens, bro. And this is why I don't care for wholesalers, like in the real estate property market. And this is how I started getting an interest in real estate. It started with wholesale properties. And I realized that wholesalers, they literally, and it's not even just wholesalers, but it's these people, because this is the people that bought her home was like a real estate investment company. They wasn't even just no regular like person, Joe Schmo. It was a real, like, legit real estate company. And these people literally go around, they look for houses that look dilapidated, but they look nice. It's like, you know what, we put a few $1,000s in it, a couple tens of $1,000s, and we could really fix it up, get a nice, you know, we can get paid nice and then really have to put much into it. They go looking for old people, tax liens like this. Like, literally, you can, I'm going to show you how simple it is. Rochester, New York, because that's where I live. Tax lien. I think it. Tax lien sales. Look at this. Well, that's good. They said they had stopped them. But what is a tax lien? A tax lien is a legal claim against real estate property for unpaid taxes, assessments, fees, or other government charges and interest that has been accumulated to your taxes and charges. A lien is created when the taxes are levied. When the annual tax, including all items added thereto, local assessments and water rates upon real estate remains unpaid after expiration of 1 year, the tax lien is delinquent and may be sold. This includes water, bro. Water. We had a toilet leak. We did bought a house. We had a toilet. It needed a part to be replaced on the toilet in our basement. And we didn't know because we don't use the basement toilet. The house is pretty huge, you know. But we only use like 2 toilets of the 4. And so we didn't even know that this toilet was running. And this toilet was just flushing, constantly going for 3 months, yo. And our Rochester Water Bureau knew this, never notified us, and then had the audacity to send us a bill talking about we owed them $2,000. I told them niggas I refused to pay. They talking about they was going to put a lien on the house, bro. I know with liens, unpaid liens, somebody come in, they pay your lien. Now you got to negotiate with them niggas. You spent all that money on your house. And you fall behind a couple $100, couple $1,000, and ain't pay it, and somebody come in and pay it. It depends on what your local municipality laws are, because sometimes they don't get it. As soon as that tax lien become available, somebody else pay it, your property is now theirs. Some locales, they give you a little time. They like, all right, we'll give you about 6 months to a year. You know, in 6 months to a year, you don't do nothing. Somebody come in and try to pay this, you lost it. They literally took this lady house, bro. I want to show y'all this lady house, but the stupid video keeps playing. But the lady basically fell behind in some tax payments, and it was something like under 10 grand. Yeah, the original $3,500 debt ballooned into almost 15 grand with fees and penalties. She couldn't pay him. She's an old 90-year-old woman. So that motherfucking mortgage company came right on in and took her junk, man. Bought her stuff. And now she's in the process of trying to negotiate with her lawyer and everything. They trying to negotiate with that family to get her property back. Can you imagine spending anywhere from $10,000 to $1 million on a house? You fall behind a couple $1,000. This lady fell behind $3,500. And with them taxes and all the fees and stuff, accumulated almost $15,000 in debt. And a fraction of what you pay for your house in total gets you to lose your house. That's crazy. But let's continue, man. I just wanted to say all that and say I ain't a proponent of that tax lien bull crap. Man, they need to get rid of that. Get rid of it. But that's how you know that the government, your local municipality, they don't give a damn about you. It's all about money. Money, 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 money. Money. Wait till you find out that you have been reduced to just monetary property. I mean, when you look into your name, all caps, if you look at any of your bills, you'll see your stuff. You go to court, your name will be in all caps. That is the version of you that can be motherfreaking dragged along in this money world. I'm telling you. Let me get back on track. We're going to talk about it. Money, 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 money. From the moment you come out the womb. Money. Money, 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 money. To the moment you die. Money. All right. Where did I leave off, Jesus? This description matches... this description matches 200 acres in town lot on which Joseph Kellogg paid taxes in 1912, and it seems likely that this anonymous listing was part of Kellogg's last-ditch effort to cut his losses to get something approaching fair value for land he had acquired through 40 years of sweat. 40 acres in a mill, 40 years. That's like all the laborers' time that them people was wandering in the wilderness with Moses. Disobedience, I'm telling you. The people with Moses. I don't know about Mr. Kellogg. In 1912, and it seems likely that this anonymous listing was part of Kellogg's last-ditch effort to cut his losses and get something approaching fair value for land he had acquired through 40 years of sweat, determination, and keen business sense. By advertising the property in an Atlanta paper, Kellogg may have hoped to find a buyer who wouldn't fully understand and therefore fully exploit his desperate situation. In the last sentence of the listing, the seller added that in the absence of a cash transaction, he would let go of his Forsyth County farm in exchange of Negro property. Implicit in such an offer was the seller's hope of relocating to some new place far from the night riders and arsonists of Forsyth and free from the inherent risks that came with white neighbors. But black people bring down the property value. I don't know, because it seemed like every time white people moved in and wreaked havoc, that property value decreased, and then all of a sudden it became hella easy to buy a property. You know what I'm saying? But let's continue. Jesus. With his offer to trade his land for Negro property, whoever placed that ad seemed to acknowledge what was fast becoming clear to everyone. Regardless of how prosperous and productive he might be, Forsyth County was no place for a black man. Meanwhile, upper-class whites continued to speak out against the violence and to protest not just the injustice of the purge, but its economic cost. It's interesting because all the abolitionists for slavery, including motherfreaking Abraham Lincoln, they weren't abolishing slavery because it was inhumane to black people. They were pro-abolishing slavery because they believed that slavery hindered the economy. And they thought that it would be more economic beneficial to abolish slavery. In addition to that, that nigga was talking about sending a bunch of free black people to countries they knew nothing of. He talking about Sierra Leone. Like, nigga, there's a good portion of black people from here. How the heck you gonna deport native people to a whole new country? Oh my gosh, whoa. Ain't that what they be saying now? They'll never do that. They must ain't never heard of Mr. What's his name? Mr. Champagne Poe. I done butchered his name again. Champagne. Sorry, Lord. Sorry, Mr. Chan. Champagne. Y'all better ask about that, man. Whole motherfucking citizen. Documented it all. Dual citizenship. Got deported and all his stuff taken. Seized. Fourth Amendment didn't apply to him no more. But let's continue. Meanwhile, upper-class whites continue to speak out against the violence and to protest not just the injustice of the purge, but its economic cost. While there was nothing all that unusual about poor whites intimidating their black neighbors, it was another thing altogether when violent crackers started threatening rich white employers and landowners. That's when you get stuff going, when you upset the rich white folks. In fact, that's how they got slavery abolished. Like upsetting the rich white folks. Do you know that they placated on white people's fears, rich white folks' fears, by showing them pictures of biracial children who were enslaved? So these are children born to black mothers, predominantly white daddies, until the laws changed around the Elizabeth Key times, which is also mentioned in Stamped from the Beginning by Mr. Kendi, Abram X. Kendi, or Ibram. But she was a biracial woman who Elizabeth Key sued for her freedom because her daddy was a white Christian. And according to the law, she took the status of her daddy, Christian, and the law prohibited enslaving Christians. So she sued for her freedom. Elizabeth Key won. And the federal government was watching hard, especially Virginia, because they was like, hold on. This girl win. We're going to have a bunch of Negroes. We're going to have a bunch of slaves flocking to the courts suing for their freedom. So she won. As soon as that lady won, Elizabeth Key won her freedom, guess what these jokers did? They changed the law. So when people sit here and wonder, well, why dads don't have any power when it comes to their children? Why it seems like all the power is given to the mom? It was intentionally done that way through legislation. And I believe it started with Elizabeth Key, because Elizabeth Key sued for her freedom, claiming the status of her white daddy, who was a Christian man at the time. She won. The people who wanted to maintain their positions of power and their wealth didn't want to risk losing all of their labor. So they lobbied for the law, the legislation to change, and that's when legislation changed. So that is when, after Elizabeth Key, look it up, after Elizabeth Key won her freedom, they changed the law and they prohibited white women from having sex with anybody other than white men. Literally. Verbatim. It explicitly was like that. White women couldn't have sex with nobody but white men. And white men can have sex with any and everybody they wanted to. Male, female, race, don't matter. But this is how they saved themselves from losing laborers, right? So now, because most wealth is associated with white men, so now that wealthy white man, and he ain't even got to be wealthy, he just got to be a white Christian man. So now that white Christian man can't necessarily sleep with your mama and you take their status. So now they made it to where that white man could hump on that black woman all day long and make as many kids as he want, and increase his labor force. Now he got a bunch of slaves coming out his nutsack working on his property, right? And they can't sue for their freedom. Why? Because the laws changed. So now the child's status cannot be taken from the daddy, but the status of that child stems from the mama. This is how they ensure to maintain their labor force. And this is how they increase their labor force, because they was like, we don't even have enough motherfucking people. We need more workers. Hump, 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 rape, rape, rape. Now we got these biracial slaves. Throw these biracial slaves out there. Now one of these niggas could sue for freedom, because they can't change my status now. I'm a white Christian man. The law states that any child born takes the status of the mama. You born to an enslaved black woman, baby, no, it don't matter if your daddy white. You take the status of that enslaved mama. So now you are a slave. And you can't sue for freedom because your daddy's status has nothing to do with you. This is why in 2026, daddy's status has nothing to do with babies. This is why all the power is with the mom. Rip apart them families. It's all for money. It's all for money. And this is why All the humping was going along. These niggas started humping. And this is why I tell y'all, just like these niggas, these white people in this, they didn't care about black people being exposed and kicked out unfairly. The only reason why they didn't like black people being bothered was because they was bothering the black people that was working on their land, on their property. They was messing with their money. You messing with their economic gains. The same with Abraham Lincoln. That nigga didn't give a damn about black people being enslaved. That nigga said it's messing up the economic gains. We need to abolish slavery. And how did he do that? By placating white people. He started showing a bunch of white people biracial kids. Now, y'all know a lot of these biracial kids was white passing. So these white people looking at these biracial kids, they looking at them like, damn, that look like me. Baby, if they can enslave them, they'll enslave me. See what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, that's how they got to where they at. It is not about the people. They could care less about us. It's not about what's humane, and it's about economic gain. Going back, let's continue. Meanwhile, upper-class whites continue to speak out against the violence in the protests. Not just the injustice of the purge, but its economic cost. That's how we ended up free. White people looked at them biracial, white-passing black folk and was like, hell to the no. If they can enslave them, they gonna come for us. We got to fight. And bam, that's how we got free, y'all. While there was nothing all that unusual about poor whites intimidating their black neighbors, it was another thing altogether when violent crackers started threatening rich white employers and landowners. There's something about coming against them wealthy white people. It's like stuff started happening. Y'all look at the criminal justice system amongst children, the juvenile delinquent system. Y'all, that was created by wealthy white women. Wealthy white people be getting stuff done. You mess with them? Psh. Anyways, in early December, one such planter drove all the way to Atlanta to meet with Joseph Mackey Brown. He warned the governor, if something is not done to check this movement, the labor situation will become quite acute. Our wives and daughter will soon be put to the necessity of doing the cooking. Lord have mercy. This nigga complaining about his wife and daughter doing the cooking. But didn't they say black people lazy? Am I tripping? If something is not done to check this movement, the labor situation will become quite acute. Our wives and daughters will soon be put to the necessity of doing the cooking, washing, and performing menial labor. Wait, I thought this was your culture. I don't know. In 2025, you got white people claiming black culture as their culture because it's cool. Like cooking with seasoning. But have anybody ever been to the UK, France, Germany? Have y'all ever ate their food? Every person I know that goes outside of the America and they go to these white countries, ain't not name one of them ever satisfied with food, bro. Damn. So what y'all about to do? Make it seem like it's just an American white culture thing? Because how y'all kinfolk across the water can't? I wouldn't dare go to no Germany and be like, I would like a plate of food. I am bringing my own, okay? Catch me at KFC. Anyways. In addition, the farmers will suffer greatly, for they will be deprived of field hands. Oh my gosh, God forbid you be deprived of field hands. Your income is being hindered. Wow. The battle lines were clearly drawn when 1912 came to a close, and in early 1913, in a speech before the General Assembly, Governor Brown acknowledged the larger threat the night riders posed, which is them lynch mob niggas. I am reliably informed, he said, that quite a number of farms in Forsyth County have been practically abandoned this year for lack of labor, which has fled before these threats. There is no reason why farms should lose their productive power and why the white women of this state should be driven to cook the stoves and wash pots. Lord have mercy. Brown's call for law and order was above all pragmatic, for white-owned farms to produce a profit, and for upper-class white families to function as they always had, with black men working in their fields and black women tending to cook stoves and wash pots of their homes. My grandma did that. And that's one of the reasons why my daddy he despised white people. Because he lost his mama when he was 11 years old. She died from, I believe it was health issues. But he felt that he didn't really get a chance to know his mom, because instead of his mom raising him, she was working for white people and raising white people kids. And mind you, my daddy was born in 1962. My grandmother died in 1974. My mother was born in 1975. Both of my parents are still alive. So when people be trying to make it seem like these situations are so far behind that they're a myth now, like it's some folklore, no, baby. That much time hasn't passed that you can pretend like this ain't never happened. Okay, I know y'all try to make it seem like Jesus ain't never walked the land, because when he walked it physically, you know, and was seen by man, it was about 2,000 years ago. So you try to make it seem like it's a myth. It's folklore, which basically a myth. Folklore is a real event that took place. It's just so much time in between when it happened and current to it just seems like a made-up event, because you're just so far removed from it. You can't do that. You can't do it with Jesus. You can't do it with slavery and sharecropping and all that wonderful jazz. But let's continue. But in Forsyth, there were landowners who disagreed with the governor's argument that black workers were a vital part of the state's economy. Black people are still a vital part of the economy, just like immigrant Latinos. Immigrants, period. But niggas be sitting out here trying to make it seem like they don't contribute. It's a lot of immigrants, you know, who contribute to services and programs that they will never be able to utilize, like unemployment, SSI, Social Security, you know, just to name a few, welfare, you know, just to name a few. Even though people will push these fallacies, hey, all them immigrants coming over here and getting on welfare, taking services from us. If you look at the data, majority white people on welfare, my brothers and sisters. It's actually the number for black colored people, period. Like the numbers is just, it's less than 10%. It's tiny. It's very tiny. It's mad white people on welfare, but I digress. Anyways, where do we live off, Jesus? They argue that farming was fast becoming a white man's job. Would you look at that? In 2026, they literally synonymously speak about farmers and white men as if they are the same, even though we see here about maybe 100 years ago, it was almost exclusively a black person's job. Wow. The individual finds just picking up a book and read. It's crazy. Literacy got us in the chokehold. You best believe that. But let's continue. But at Forsyth, there were landowners who disagreed with the governor's argument that black workers were a vital part of the state economy. They argued that farming was fast becoming a white man's job, as the banker Benjamin Hunt put it in the Atlanta Constitution, citing statistics from the big cotton counties. In the 1910 census, a category that in his analysis included Forsyth, Hunt declared that the most productive Georgia counties were invariably those that show an excess of white farmers, while the least productive show an excess of Negro. I'm pretty sure I feel like it wasn't too long ago that I heard the same sentiment about white people and Mexican workers. And then we've been seeing all these little snapshots of white workers on these farms where a lot of Latino immigrants or Latinos, I don't even want to say immigrants because I don't even know they're immigrants. Some of them could have been literal native born citizens and they were just boop, displaced, kidnapped, don't know where they were or taken. But this is the same sentiment that is stated about white people and Latino, people today, employees today. But then when you look at these snapshots of the people working on these farms, white people moving so slow, the production time has increased drastically to the point where the niggas in charge is whining and complaining, like, yo, y'all got to do something with this foreigner immigration nonsense, because you're messing with our money. You leaving us with these entitled motherfucking American white people. And y'all know these American white people, they're worse than the black people, okay? We don't even want the black people. We trying to get the people that don't even know that they covered by the Constitution, okay? Help me help you. But let's continue. There were many explanations for this disparity. Oh my gosh, disparity. That word comes up a lot. Y'all know this book was written by a white man, Patrick Phillips. Blood at the Root of Racial Cleansing in America. A lot of people try to be like, black people and they, dog whistling. This is a white man that wrote this book. Oh my gosh. Speaking of white man that wrote a book. Oh my, I almost lost my page, y'all. The book I really want to read, y'all, I gotta take a break here. This book is called The Dying of Whiteness. The title in itself is just... I'm a big book nerd, y'all. I encourage y'all. I might read some from it. I don't know if I'm gonna read the whole thing. I'm definitely not gonna read it next because I'm reading Thomas Sowell book. I've been promising people for a while that I read that book. But Dying of Whiteness, baby. I love this book. Another book written by a white man where he talks about how white people are basically literally killing themselves with their bigoted voting process and thought process. It gave this story about this white dude, right? This nigga was dying. He was hooked up to a whole oxygen tank. Like, his health was in the doo-doo. It was in the dumpster. It was down. And prop that right there so y'all can see that. Prop it up on my PSP. But it talked about this man. And the author was interviewing this dude who was dying. And he was like, yo, I want to know your perspective about, voting and people. Y'all can see I done read all through this already. I got my little scribbles and all that in there. I done read all up in here. But he was talking about, he was trying to gauge where this man's thought processes was. It's like, how you vote? Who you vote for? He's like, basically, I vote for anything that's anti, free health care and all this other stuff. And dude looking at him with his motherfucking oxygen tank, he all hooked up, dying, bro. Speaking crazy. Talk about, I'm not trying to get no health care because then all them foreigners, them Mexicans, and just talking crazy, gonna get on it. Would you believe me if I told you that man died? This ain't the book. In the book, he told us the man died and emphasized how this man died from having health issues for voting against something that could benefit him. But because he was so selfish, it was like, I don't want these other people getting it. This nigga ended up killing himself in the process. If that's not selfishness, what the freak is it? You're dying. And you're going to vote against universal health care, which you could benefit from right now. Just because you don't want some black people and some Mexicans on it? That man dead. I don't know his burial arrangements, but I like to think he probably got cremated, because who can afford a motherfucking funeral? Half the time, it's a blessing to be a veteran, because it's like, you know what? If you poor, at least as a veteran, you could be like, I'm a veteran. Let me get buried on government government money. Dying of whiteness, y'all. How the politics of racial resentment is killing America's homeland. Literally, politics is of racial resentment is killing people because they are voting out of selfishness. They voting against things that have helped them just to hurt others. It's crazy. But let's continue. I'm gonna need you to fix yourself, all right? Because I ain't got all day. I'm trying to go eat, bro. Let's see how many more pages I got. Okay, Jesus, we getting there. 5 more pages, y'all. So that's about 10 front and back. Where did I leave off? Lord have mercy. I think I went too far. Yes, this looks about right. Pragmatic whites. Okay. There were many explanations for his disparity in the productivity of white and black counties, including the barriers to credit faced by African Americans, their inability to purchase the best parcels of land. Y'all look at them disparities. And the myriad ways in which the culture and legal system of Jim Crow South was stacked against us. It's a white man saying that, you know. I know there's some people out here who don't believe anything until it comes out of the mouth of a white man. It ain't coming out of a white man's mouth. But he wrote the book. Close enough, right? Nonetheless, Hunt made a case for viewing Georgia's cotton empire as a product of Caucasian ingenuity and Caucasian living, as he put it. Hour and 51 minutes, Lord have mercy. It's all right. We educating here. I'm having fun. I'm just hungry, y'all. That's why I'm hungry. Woke up from a nap, started this motherfucking live, and I'm hungry. But anyways, we are indebted to the white race for the American success in cotton. I can't even finish the sentence. What? We are indebted to the white race for the American success in cotton culture? Hunt wrote, that's not a question. I'm just saying it. Not to Negro slavery nor black labor. Okay. Well, what's your reason for this, sir? Let's continue. This was a revisionist history. That's what I thought. He rewriting history. Okay. That denied what everyone in Georgia could see with their own eyes. All right. Okay. We on the same page. Niggas tripping. This nigga tripping. That most cotton fields in the state were planted, tended, and harvested by black hands. It had been for as long as anyone could remember. That's what I thought. He tripping. Okay. White people tend to do that. I mean, look at the American education system. Not only do illiteracy have us in a chokehold, which maybe is a good thing that we can't read, because then we don't have to worry about reading and retaining revision history. If you're dumb, you ain't gotta worry about that. You ain't gotta worry about that programming, because it's like, nigga, I can't read anyways. But let's continue. Anyways, this was a revisionist history that denied what everyone in Georgia could see with their own eyes. That most cotton fields in the state were planted, tended, and harvested by black hands. It had been for as long as anyone could remember, as long as I can remember, and I'm only 33. Hunt's argument that cotton was a Caucasian crop erased 2 centuries of toil by enslaved people and ignored the success of black farmers like Joseph and Eliza Kellogg. Tell them! It also allowed whites to claim exclusive rights in a cotton empire that, oh my gosh, sounds like what's happening today. A bunch of revision histories going on, and then you got a bunch of people motherfucking holding arms, motherfucking mobbing on people based on fallacies. It's crazy. Don't nobody be quicker to fight over stupid than white people. Them niggas, they be ready to fight. Don't be knowing what they fighting. Hella uninformed. Misinformed. I ain't want to put it. Be hella misinformed, but they be ready to do them up, brothers, do them up. What's that stance they do? I don't even know how to do it. Anyways, And I say they because when I've been watching all them old boxing from like the early 1900s, like the 1920s and the 1960s, a lot of them white guys had that put 'em up fighting stance that you seen on, the late night cartoon network. I feel like Tom and Jerry had a little fighting stance like that before. It was, y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, let me stop. Hungry. Let's go. Hunt's argument that cotton was a Caucasian crop erased 2 centuries of toil by enslaved people and ignored the success of black farmers like Joseph and Eliza Kellogg. Every time I hear Kellogg, I always think about that cereal. Y'all got something to do with that cereal, family? It's cornflakes, right? It also allowed whites to claim exclusive rights in a cotton empire that, at least in Hunt's view, they and they alone had built. Okay. But this still left the question of how landowners were ever going to make their crops in a place where African Americans had been banished and banned from ever returning. From the earliest days of British colonialism, that's crazy. British colonialism. And then white people think that seasoning food is a part of their culture. But when you look in Britain, you visit Britain, people all say the same thing about these motherfucking European foods. I don't know. Maybe I need to try Italian food in Italy or something, because Italian food in America, I don't like it. It's nasty. I don't like it. Stay on track, T. Y'all, forgive me. It's the hunger. It's the hunger. It's making me like freaking sidetrack. Anyways. From the earliest days of British colonialism, many whites had argued that forced labor was essential to farming in Georgia's searingly hot, humid, and malarial climate, and that without the institution of slavery, whites would never make it on their own. But then you got Hunt sitting here talking about whites and whites alone contributed to the cotton industry. Baby, y'all don't thrive in the heat. Just look at all your sunburnt homies, you know what I'm saying? Y'all don't thrive in the heat. As colonist Thomas Stevens put it in 1742, the extraordinary heats here, the extraordinary difficulties and danger there, is in clearing the lands, and the poor returns make it indisputably impossible for white men alone to carry on planting to any good purpose. The poor people of Georgia may as well think of becoming Negroes themselves as of hoping to be able or ever able to live without them. See, now that sounds right. I'm going to read that over. The poor people of Georgia, I think they talk about the poor white people. The poor white people of Georgia, but they say the poor people of Georgia may as well think of becoming Negroes themselves as of hoping to be ever able to live without them. See, I really think there's some white people out here who really look at themselves synonymous to black people. In the sense of, I kid you not, I was pursuing my bachelor's degree at Brockport. And I took this communications of law class. And in the class, I forget what subject, what we were doing with the curriculum, but I know we had this project, and we had to do a project. I don't remember what the project was on specifically, but I remember this one girl, she did her project on black magic, and she did hers around Michelle Obama. And I'll never forget, because the teacher opened the floor to everybody stay after school if we're going to have some conversation. Like, her motherfucking project stirred up some issues, okay? By the time she got done with her project, when it comes to questions and answers, the white people was just so... Why, when it comes to black people, they always got to make everything about black? White people don't come into stuff and be like, white magic, but black people, it's black magic. So the teacher was like, well, we'll save some time after class. You know, y'all can sit around and talk about it. The nigga who asked that stupid question, little white boy, he decided he wasn't even going to stick around. He just wanted to interrupt the class with that stupid A question. And then at the end of it, he left, and we was left with this, what many would presume is white trash. This white trash white boy. The white boy that asked the question, he seemed to come from a more affluent background, but he could very much be poor as well. But he looked to be more affluent than the kid that actually decided to stick around. The guy that stick around was like saying like, yeah, black people and white people, we're all in the same boat. We go through the same stuff. We're all poor. You know, we all deal with, I forget, I can't even get my lips to push the words out because it's like, nigga, what? What? Working class poor white people ain't the same as working class poor black people, and it damn sure ain't the same as working class poor whites compared to the middle class blacks. It's not the same. Wealthier black people, affluent black people have money and still be treated like poor black people. Just because they black. It's like, nigga, don't nobody give a damn about you. Oh, you got money? You still get the same treatment. We'll take your money, but you still get treated like the rest of them working class niggles. But this, it's like, bro, I can agree with you that you live in poverty. You know what I'm saying? That your access to jobs are bleak. But we ain't in the same boat. Academic research has found that a white man with a criminal record will be hired over a black man with no criminal record. So how can we be the same? Having a criminal record eliminates me in everything because I'm black. But you get hired over me, over my brother, my daddy, who ain't got no criminal record, and you do. And we see it all the time. These supply companies, the construction companies, you know, a lot of these like hands-on, you know, blue-collar jobs is heavily held by white people. And when my neighbors be hiring these raggedy contractors, oh my goodness, they be white people. And when them white people be so slack, they be all on my property, throwing cigarette butts, dropping stuff, and I come out there harassing them niggas every time. Get your butt off my motherfucking property because I'ma sue you. You break something, I'm suing you. I got cameras, nigga. You all on my stuff. Suing you. I done went back and forth with these niggas. I done been bribed by white construction companies, by a white roofing company here in Rochester. They're called Rochester Roofing. These niggas bribed me because they hired some raggedy niggas that I went off on and then tried to hit me with the, you know, please forgive us because they're roofers, you know. Some of these guys, the backgrounds that they come from, they're a rough bunch. He basically said that y'all raggedy demeanor is unfixable because you are just poor and ran down. That's literally what this white man told me in just not so many words. So I do agree that there's a stigma when it comes to poor white people. But baby, poor white people and poor black people are not the same. Stop trying to make it seem like we're the same. It's not. I'm going to keep reading. Oh, Jesus. I'm trying to get through these pages, Lord. I thank my wife for being downstairs cooking because I'm supposed to be helping her. Tara, let's go. Where we left off, Jesus. The extraordinary. No. I think it was, But after 200 years of dependence on black workers, Benjamin Hunt argued that white farmers can now prosper without them. Thanks to the technological advances in the early 20th century, I desire the world to realize that the economic changes wrought by machinery have revolutionized all labor conditions. Hunt said, "Oh, so is that why they brought in, you know, that new equipment? They was like, all right, we taking the jobs from the Negroes and putting them back in the hands of the white people." Because if you think about it, a lot of black peoples were now not even sought after for having the jobs because now they had to develop a new skill set. They didn't know how to use none of the machinery. They would have to relearn that, which makes you kind of an unwanted employee. But let's continue. Hunt said, "To think correctly, we must think in terms of this era of free white labor and not in terms of the black labor of the past." Whatever, bro. Faced with complaints from the women in his own household, Ansel Strickland, the coming doctor who has hosted execution of Knox and Daniels, yeah, this rich man, hosted. He literally held like a execution party, bro. That's why I say y'all gotta go back in the earlier chapter. This book is nuts. And you gotta remember, the book is based on legit events. Mary Turner, who was a black pregnant woman who voiced her complaints and her gripes about her husband being murdered at the hands of white people. Yeah, they turned her around, murdered her, and then set her on fire, carved her stomach open. The baby dropped, hit the ground, started crying, and these people stomped the baby out. Mary Turner. Really happened. In Georgia. I got a video on that too. Go back and look. Anyways, let's go. Niggas been wreaking havoc, but black people so violent. We just so criminal based. All right. That's not what history says. Faced with complaints from the women in his own household, Ansel Strickland, the coming doctor who had hosted the executions of Knox and Daniels, started thinking along the same lines as Benjamin Hunt in early 1913. As upper-class families of Cumming struggled to adapt to Forsyth's new whites-only era, Strickland wrote a letter to the North Georgian, offering suggestions for how people unaccustomed to domestic labor could solve basic problems such as washing clothes. "Well, old man," Strickland began, "the Negro is gone from Forsyth County, and you had as well roll up your sleeves and follow me. For the last 33 years, I have always hired my wife's washing done by Negroes at a heavy expense. But on the morning of October 22nd, 1912, my Negro washwoman informed me that she was going to leave my washing for my wife to do, saying that the people did not give the Negro proper protection. I told her in so many words that if I had to sell my daughter's virtue to Negro boys in order to retain her as a washwoman, she could get." Damn. I wouldn't want him as a daddy. This nigga like, I don't even care about you. It's just, you would really sell your daughter just to keep, nigga, because you don't want your wife to do laundry? Okay, Lot. Y'all better read the Bible. Y'all remember when Lot offered his daughters to them people that was trying to run up in the house and break them angels? And he was like, "No, these are my guests. You can have my daughters. They're virgins." And Jesus stepped on in and was like, "Bro, let me come in here. Humans is the depravity of their own hearts, man. Something wrong with us. Humans is stupid. Sell his own daughter for laundry." I don't want a daddy like that. Thank God I ain't had one. Having fired his servant for daring to protest Forsyth's wave of mob violence, Strickland told readers that he at once ordered improved wash pots, tubs, wringers, etc., and prepared to take the hard part of the washing onto my and the boys' shoulders. These niggas talking like they asking them to build a motherfucking spaceship to go out of. Like, if you can't wash clothes, my brothers and sisters, you know what? It ain't no if. This nigga couldn't do it. And that's why he overemphasizing his ability to do it. This is nuts. It's kind of like Niggas always cramming down. Dudes always cramming. I'm watching my baby. I'm watching my baby. You're not watching your baby. You're raising. Raising. Okay. Raising. Look at me. I'm doing laundry. Look at me. I'm raising my child. What's wrong with people? When I saw a northern woman washing with improved machinery, they made the wash tub day a panic compared to the old Georgia way of washing. Armed with his modern equipment and reconciled to the fact that his black servants were gone and would never be coming back, Strickland proudly declared that his family had adopted the cooperative plan of washing at my house, and we are independent of the Negro. Good on you, because niggas tired of washing your dirty drawers anyway. Dookie drawers having it. I endeavored to make a wash day a day of pleasure to the ladies. Oh my gosh. It's the most rudimentary stuff that this nigga is blowing up as like, yes, we're taking this task on. Boy. Do you make announcements every time you brush your teeth too? You little dirty nigga. Strickland was clearly proud to be independent of the Negro, and he wanted to convince others in Forsyth that new machines could more than make up for the sudden loss of black workers, who represented 1/10 of the county's population in the census of 1910, but a much larger percentage of its labor supply. Just as Benjamin Hunt imagined new machinery and chemical fertilizers making up for the loss of black field hands started poisoning the land just to make up for black field hands. It was like, you know what? They done kicked out all these black people. We're gonna adjust. We're gonna pour poisons on the ground and further depreciate the land. Niggas is retarded. Lord have mercy. Strickland presented to the wise Forsyth a vision of a home life in which the modern wash tub and wringer will more than compensate for the loss of maids and butlers and laundresses, and make domestic chores a pleasure to the ladies. Rich planners like Strickland and Hunt had reason to feel optimistic in the second decade of the 20th century, as life on the American farm was just beginning to be revolutionized by new technologies. As early as the 1870s, inventors had experimented with steam-powered farm equipment, but because of their massive weight and high cost, steam engines had never competed seriously with the horse and the mule, particularly in regions like the Georgia Hill country, which was dominated by small-scale farmers, working plots that rarely yielded enough profit for such a major investment. There were still 21 million horses and mules in the United States in 1900. 21 million? In 1900, I wonder how many of this now. It gotta be like 10,000, because it seemed like there's barely a horse or a mule anywhere, especially a mule. And they pulled plows, threshing machines, harrows, and reapers, and served as the primary means of transportation for rich and poor alike. Refinements in internal combustion had led to the widespread adoption of stationary gas engines around the turn of the century. These didn't replace the horse, but they were increasingly used for tasks like pumping water, churning butter, and yes, washing clothes. Then in 1902, a truly revolutionary invention was introduced. The first prototypes of self-propelled gasoline-powered traction engines, which quickly became known simply as tractors. These smaller, more reliable, cheaper machines allow farmers to increase production not only by supplanting the horse and mule at plowing time, but also by mechanizing much of the labor-intensive work of harvesting. I'm trying to cram that word, y'all. I'm hungry. Anyways, when, in 1913, Ansel Strickland described the Forsyth County farm of the future, he imagined whites solving their labor problem by replacing the vanished Negro farmhand, not with the equivalent class of white workers, but with tireless, gleaming new machines. Oh my gosh, it's 9:38. Okay. It's all right. That's what I get for moving so slow today. Anyways, let's continue. That is precisely what happened when just 4 years later, Henry Ford introduced the first truly practical small tractor, the Fordson, which sold for less than $1,000 in 1917 and soon became the Model T of the agricultural world. Hold on, let me read this. Now you're talking my language, redemption, let's go. I have to go, but I truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing this. You have made this more than a book. You're telling the truth for what most take for granted. I wish you leave this up. I definitely will, ma'am. I for sure will. And you are very much welcome. And I thank you for chiming in with me. I appreciate it, truly. And I will get better with my timing. You know, I am a hot mess right now, but I will get better, y'all. So let me continue. Thank you for stopping in, though. Lady Neek. Let's see. All over Georgia for its annual parade of early 20th century tractors, which blow their whistles and spout billowing clouds of smoke on the coming square every 4th of July. For longtime residents, the brightly colored, painstakingly restored tractors are a symbol of the good old days, back when farming was still the main business of a county that has now become an affluent suburb of Atlanta. Never mentioned at the annual tractor parade is the fact that such machines first rode into Forsyth in the years immediately after the racial cleansing. So tractors came into the picture after the racial cleansing, aka the expulsion of Negroes. Interesting. And then it seems, parallel to the release of farming chemicals, fertilizers. Interesting. You ain't got black people to do all your bidding no more, so now you're pulling out tractors and poisons. Gotcha. Never mentioned at the annual tractor parade is the fact that such machines first rode into the Forsyth in the years immediately after racial cleansing, when farmers looked out across their stubbed fields and realized that for the first time in history of the county, every acre of arable land would have to be plowed and planted by white hands. Well, machinery directed by white workers was the future. It was like, we just need a big mule. That's it. We ain't trying to put our hands down there, but we'll ride a big old machine that will. Nah. But the first gas-powered, machinery directed by white workers was featured, at least according to men like Benjamin Hunt. When the first gas-powered tractors sank their discs into the red soil of Forsyth, whites must have hoped that these new machines would transform the county into a much more prosperous place, as indeed they did. Bands of armed white men had cleared the land of black homes, black churches, and black bodies, and now the tractor will release it from the competition and complications of free black labor. I just wanted to add a pause for emphasis. During the same years that Forsyth planters were struggling to make due with their new whites-only labor force, President Woodrow Wilson was engaged in another form of racial cleansing at the very highest levels of the United States government. A Virginia Democrat, Virginia, the same Virginia that initiated in its Supreme Court the law change that took the status of children from the daddy and solely placed it onto the mother to ensure laborers when white men had sex with black women so their children could not sue for their freedom based on the status of their daddy, but in fact remain enslaved due to the status by law taken from their mamas. Interesting. A Virginia Democrat who has spent his formative years in Augusta, Georgia as the son of a pro-slavery minister. Sounds about right. And that pro-slavery minister, Wilson, came to prominence as president of Princeton University, a prestigious college out here that is heavily white. Even with them trying to make it seem like affirmative action brought in all these black people, affirmative action brings in a bunch of poor white people, a bunch of queer, gay white people, a bunch of Asians. You get all them people before you get a black person. So for people who wrongly believe in the fallacy that affirmative action benefits more black people than anybody else, baby, I love to break it to you. Affirmative action has benefited more white women, gay white men, poor white men, and then, more than anybody else. And then it benefited the people that y'all would take over black people. The Africans, the Asians, But let's continue. All you gotta do is just pick up a book and read. That's it. A Virginia Democrat who had spent his formative years in Augusta, Georgia as the son of a pro-slavery minister, Wilson came to prominence as president of Princeton University, then governor of New Jersey. In 1912, he defeated progressive nominee Theodore Roosevelt in the presidential election, having campaigned as a reformer and friend to the worker class. Interesting. His vow to help the man on the make garnered a great deal. See, he only appealed to the working class white man, not the working class black, Native American, Asian, whatever ones that was still living here, and so on. The Asian British Act of 1882 that catapulted several other federal legislations that prohibited the existence of Asian people in the United States. But let's continue. His vow to help the man on the make garnered a great deal of support from black voters. His vow to help the man on the make garnered a great deal of support from black voters. That sounds familiar. Jimmy Carter, a lot of black people got behind him. The Roosevelt dude. Not Roosevelt. Kennedy. The Kennedy. Abe Lincoln. Probably was the same thing for that guy that competed against George Bush, the daddy. What's his name? I want to say Buttigieg, but I know it's not Buttigieg. That's that gay dude that ran for office in like 2016. Dukakis, that's the nigga name. Michael Dukakis. Yes, that's when the whole shift on the Democratic side occurred. George W. Bush was losing. Dukakis was a man of the people. He was pro motherfreaking, prison reform and all this other stuff, which benefited white people tremendously because a lot of poor, uneducated white people who were incarcerated acquired education while incarcerated. Yeah, this man was pro the furlough program and everything. He was going to win. And then George Bush, the daddy, was like, oh, no, I can't lose to this guy. He's put in a call. He got motherfreaking a black man released from prison to play on the fears of white people called Willie Horton. And Willie Horton was released, supposedly brutally killed this lady. And if I'm not mistaken, also her little boyfriend or fiance or something. The news and George Bush daddy. Ooh, excuse me, guys. I'm burping from empty belly, I guess. But George Bush, him and the news, they took Willie Horton, started darkening this man on the motherfreaking news, and started playing on white fear, that white anxiety, the criminalistic, barbaric, demonized Negro coming out to the community. And this is all what Dukakis is for. He is for prison reform. Because of him, criminal was released, and a white woman and white man was violently just harmed. And then all of a sudden it was clutching my pearls. And a bunch of people that voted more liberal and was okay with prison reform because it benefited them, now all of a sudden shifted. Started voting more conservative, Republican. George Bush daddy wins. And then the next term, Bill Clinton, he's not coming out with this. We're just soft on crime. He wasn't. He was like, no, I want y'all to see I'm just like the Republicans. We are hard on crime, man. Hard on crime. That's when he came out with the crime bill. His wife calling black people motherfucking super predators. A whole shift. And that's why Democrats they never really looked much different from Republicans, but now they most certainly don't even look much different. But let's continue. We're trying to finish because I gotta eat. All right, so his vow to help the man on the make garnered a great deal of support from black voters, who hoped for the best despite Wilson's Southern roots and his outspoken defense of segregation at Princeton. Damn, they really thought this nigga was gonna help them. He had black voter support, despite this nigga openly defending segregation. Interesting. Where in 1909 he deemed it altogether inadvisable for black students to enroll. Bruh. And this is why every voting, it don't matter local or motherfucking federal, I just write in Jesus. I'm not voting for one of these turds. It won't be hovering over my conscience knowing that I done voted in a motherfucking dookie. You know? Like, hell to the no. Give me Jesus. Wilson had tried to reassure black voters at the height of 1912 campaign, issuing a statement that they could count on him for absolute fair dealing. Lord have mercy. These niggas just a liar. But what do you expect with politicians? Niggas just lie all day. They render a bunch of promises that they have no intentions of ever keeping. In the March 13 issue of The Crisis, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote an open letter to the newly inaugurated president, making it clear that support from African American voters came with an expectation that Wilson would be true to his word and use the power of the presidency to work for racial equality. Sir, Du Bois began, your inauguration, which means that you'll start but not completion, is to the colored people a momentous occasion. We black men, by our votes, helped put into power a man who could become the greatest benefactor of his country since Abraham Lincoln. We black men. So it's not about colored people. And this is one of the complaints in regards to Du Bois. Did you really fight for black people, or is it just black men? Yeah, people like Sojourner Truth, who was very vocal. She said she worked right alongside doing laborious, feats right along with black men. Am I a woman? Yes, when she gave that speech, she was coming for white women and black men, as well as white men, of course. But she was letting you know, hey, white people, I see what y'all doing, but black man, just because these niggas put nooses up on your neck don't mean you put one on me. You come to my house, husband, and take my check and want to run the house, and then you take the money and then go drink it on. She talked about it in a couple of her speeches. But we ain't there. I got a lot of stuff in it. We'll keep going. The fight is on, and you, sir, are the mouth of stepping into this arena. We want to be treated as men. We want to vote. We want our children educated. Our sons. We want lynching stopped. We want no longer to be herded as cattle on streetcars and railroads. I mean, we were part of chattel slavery. which we were looked at synonymously to cattle. Yeah. But we no longer want to be herded as cattle on streets, cars, and railroads. We want the right to earn a living, to own our own property, and to spend our income unhindered and uncursed. In the name, then, of that common country for which your fathers and our have bled and toiled, be not untrue, President Wilson, to the highest ideals of American democracy. By forsaking Republican William Howard Taft and endorsing Wilson, Du Bois had helped the new president win more African American votes than any previous Democratic presidential candidate. And the crisis editor clearly wanted to remind Wilson of the debt he owed Black America. This just continues to happen where these niggas is just, you know what I'm saying? They use Black people to round up Black people, get them on their side. Now they got them. They win. And then it's like deuces, Black people. It just keeps coming. It's like a cycle that just never ends. Yeah. Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton, Let's get it. Come on. It didn't take long for Wilson to reward Du Bois' faith with a stinging rebuke. Oh, we knew it was coming. He soon empowered cabinet members to racially segregate the bathrooms and cafeterias in government buildings and to segregate a civil service that had been integrated since the days of Reconstruction. Wilson ignored African-American candidates when making new political appointments. Sounds about right. And when in 1914, the Black newspaper editor Monroe went to Washington to demand that the president undo this race segregation in accord with your duty as president and with your pre-election pledges to colored American voters, Wilson was unrepentant. Well, would you look at that? Ain't even shocked. They all do it. Barack Obama, did it too. Cycle that just perpetuates itself. But let's continue. Wilson ignored African-American candidates when making new political appointments, and when in 1914 the Black newspaper editor Monroe went to Washington to demand that the president undo this race segregation in accord with your duty as president and with your pre-election pledges to colored American voters, Wilson was unrepentant. Segregation of the federal government is not humiliating, the president told Trotter and his delegation of Black leaders. It was, he said, a benefit and ought to be so regarded by you gentlemen. Damn. How I feel to go out of your way and help a nigga get in office and then for him to just drop a turd right in your lap and slap you. And then they'll touch your lip and say, shh. Niggas keep doing it too. They do that little bust out into a jig for him. Hey, I'll get the Negroes for you. You gonna do what you promised me? And then they realize, like, oh, you thought I cared about you? Nigga, you in the same boat as them? I don't care about them. I sure don't care about you. You with them, nigga. I'll use you, though. Thank you. God bless. It's crazy. Lord have mercy. Wilson then had the delegation removed from the White House, saying that if Black leaders ever wanted another audience with the president, they would need another spokesman. Well, damn, okay. Woodrow. He said, you want to talk to me, you better go get you a white man. How many of y'all see them spaces, right, where it's Black owned, Black ran, until it's time to get into these certain rooms at these certain tables, and then all the faces be white, and it's like, I thought the business was Black. Why the representation white? There's a lot of people out here that has a lot of wealth. They don't give a damn how much money you make. A nigga still a nigga. I almost said something extra, but I ain't even gonna go there. They don't care about us. They don't really care about us. Ain't that right, Michael Jackson? That's crazy. I gotta keep going. This nigga went in. He scolded Trotter, a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Harvard. Oh, Trotter, you thought he was gonna respect you because you come out of the same little sorority or fraternity as him? And you graduated from a white prestigious college? Oh, you thought that you was gonna get white man treatment and not nigger treatment? And he said, your manner offends me, your tone with its background of passion. Woodrow! Woodrow went in. Hold on, I gotta say this again. Hold on, this nigga went in. Where is it start? Segregation of the federal government is not humiliating, the president told Trotter in his delegation of black leaders. It was, he said, a benefit and ought to be so regarded by you gentlemen. Wilson then had the delegation removed from the White House, saying that if black leaders ever wanted another audience with the president, they will need another spokesperson. He scolded Trotter, a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Harvard, saying, your manner offends me, your tone with its background of passion. Get out of my face, peasant. It's the white mother freaking house, not the black house. Get up out of here with your black knees. Woodrow Wilson. Oh, Jesus. Woodrow Wilson started the audacity for these people. He funny. Wilson had office from 1913 to 1921, and throughout his 2 terms, he continued to implement Jim Crow policies in Washington, where African-American applicants deemed ineligible for most government jobs in both the Department of Treasury and the U.S. Postal Service, segregated by order of senior cabinet members. Ha! But then people want to make it seem like the oppression that black people has endured isn't systemic. Baby, this is the federal government. He's like, black people, wait. It's crazy. It's crazy. Let's continue. Wilson documented his own bigotry in 1918. Man, this nigga's a thug. When in his History of the American People, he wrote that a great Ku Klux Klan had risen up after the Civil War and helped rid the South of the intolerable burden of government sustained by the votes of ignorant Negroes. This nigga was put in office by Negroes and then just went mayhem after it got in there. Damn. Having such a man in the White House emboldened white supremacists across the nation, and particularly in the South, which Wilson had once called home. Black postal workers and government employees were fired all over the region and were barred from state jobs that had been one of the few paths to the middle class open to the people of color. In 1913, the director of the Internal Revenue Service's office in Atlanta left little doubt that Wilson's support of segregation was a devastating blow to all African Americans, and particularly in places like Georgia. There are no government positions for Negroes in the South, he said. A Negro goes places in the cornfield. Mind you, these niggas still share the same sentiment today regarding Negroes. I'm just saying. But let's continue. Yet even as Wilson reversed the gears of racial progress in Washington, and as Forsyth County men like Ansel Strickland touted the benefits of a racially cleansed labor force, many of the wives of Cumming were growing weary of life without their black help. It's crazy how dudes just be like, yeah, let's do this. And then the ones that go to suffer be the women. It's the same sentiment when it came to, fighting inequalities amongst black people, where you got black men going out of their ways talking about color people for color people for color people, but whole time it's for color men, black men, and black women is just left in the back, just like, what about me, nigga? Ain't I black? What's the Sojourner Truth said, ain't I a woman? She did say, ain't I black in there too. But let's continue. I gotta eat. Many of the wives of Cumming were growing weary of life without their black help and exhausted from replacing all that domestic labor themselves. And white women said, baby, I'm tired. Where the black women at? I'm tired. I ain't cut for this life. How dare you get me accustomed to a lackadaisical lifestyle and then get me accustomed to having servants, and then you turn around and strip me from it. And leave me to do all hard work in the day while you just sitting out here talking heavy. Yes, this is to uplift the white people. White people this, white people that. But then the ones that's doing all the work is the white women. Men versus women has always been a few. And then you just throw in black, white, Latino. It's just, what they say? What's it saying? Intersectionality and all that jazz. But let's continue. With the racial purge of 1912 still just a few months old, Laura Hockenhull. See, I know some of y'all niggas out there got these people last names. Sound made up, but I know some of y'all got them. Hockenhull had enough. And she urged her husband, Cumming Dr. John Hockenhull, to reach out to his former employee wherever they had fled. She said, you better get a hold of them niggas. Because I ain't doing this no more. I ain't your servant. How dare you fire the help and then make me the help? Nigga, I ain't enslaved. I's a white woman. She said, wherever they had fled and somehow lure them back. No doubt enticed by the wages Hockenhull offered and assured by him that they would be safe. 3 families, the Blakes, the Smiths, and the Grahams. Baby, Blakes, Smiths, and Grahams are all last names of black people that I know. Grahams and Smiths, I know for sure I'm related to. Blakes, welcome family. We all kinfolk. Anyways, let's continue. Moved back into their cabins on the Hockenhull property in early February of 1913 and tried to quietly resume their former lives. Ophelia Blake, a 53-year-old widow, had been the Hockenhull's maid and cook for many years. She sounds like she can cook. 53. A widow, too. She ain't got nothing else to do but cook. That ain't sound right. Forgive me, Jesus. Forgive me. Cooked for many years before the Night Riders forced her to flee with the 2 youngest of her 8 children, sons Louis and Atkinson, 18 and 16. Before they were forced out, Alex and Flora Graham had also rented on Hockenhull's property where they were raising sons Leonard, 4, and Henry, 2. Frank Smith, a farmhand, had lived there with his wife, Annie, and their 4 children, Bile, 12, Eddie, 8, Roosevelt, 6, and Lula, 3. Oh, that reminds me of an aunt. I had a great aunt, Eulalie. That was her name, though. Eulalie. That Laura Hockenhull's servants agreed to come back at all is a testament to just how bleak the outlook was for the Forsyth refugees, particularly as fall turned to winter and as the steady work of the harvest came to an end. While they must have taken some comfort in returning as a group, they also lived in a precarious existence, completely cut off from the black community they'd once known, which is very dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous being amongst black people because there's a sense, especially when white government officials impose on your life, is you ain't got nothing to say here. Don't say nothing. Don't record me. You want to get arrested too? You want to get hemmed up? Just ask Mary Turner. Her husband was murdered. She went out there voiceless for her husband. They took her around, brutally murdered her, carved her belly open, let her unborn, to now be born child fall out of her belly and stomp the baby as it cried when it hit the floor. I said the floor, but it's concrete. They outside, bro. Mind you, they set this lady on fire. I'm just saying. And shielded from the white mobs and lynchers only as long as they stayed within the confines of Hawk and Hope land. If the quiet that greeted their return gave Ophelia Blake hope that Forsyth might once again be safe, those hopes were soon shattered. The Atlanta Constitution reported that on the night of Wednesday, February 19, 1913, persons unknown crept onto the Hawk and Hope place. They slid bundle sticks. Oh, Jesus. Here go the psychos. Get up out of here. They slid bundle sticks of dynamite into the crawl spaces under the Negro cabins where the Blakes, the Grahams, and the Smiths were sleeping with their children. When unspooled, or did I say then? My bad, y'all. Then unspooled a long coil of fuse and crouched in the dark where the only visible sign of their presence was the brief flare of a match. According to one witness, the explosion at Dr. Hawkenhole's place aroused practically the entire town. They doing this at a doctor's house, so dude's wealthy for the bare minimum, you know. Ain't get no damn. This sound like some poor white people junk. Like, you ain't got nothing else better to do with your life. You mad because your life sucked, and you blaming other people, kind of like what niggas is doing now. My life sucked, so now I'm just gonna blame black people, and I'm gonna blame the immigrants and the migrants, and I'm gonna say immigrant and migrant interchangeably and confuse the people, even though I don't really know the difference between the two. And I'm gonna be so hateful towards these people whom I don't even know because my life sucks. Even though they ain't got squat to do with my life sucking. It's the people in power, you know what I'm saying? And some of my life decisions, you know, my decisions that led me here. But I'm gonna do terrorize people that ain't got squat to do with nothing. Yeah, sounds about right. Jesus. According to one witness, the explosion at Dr. Hawkenhole's place aroused practically the entire town, and the concussion shook many buildings. The Negroes who had recently returned to Cumming were terror-stricken. The dynamiters made their escape before the townspeople had ascertained what had taken place. The newspapers make no mention of whether the three families lived or died. Sounds about right. They don't give a damn about black people. And at this point, they disappeared entirely from written records of the county. Ophelia Blake, Frank Smith, and Alex Graham had tried, however cautiously and however quietly, to come home. The response delivered in the dead of night left no room for doubt. Forsyth was now a place for whites only, and even black people born and raised there were forced to heed the warnings of the night riders, defying them as the Hawkenholes and their tenants had done. Was nothing short of suicidal. The Negro cabins at the edge of the Hawkenhole property were left in splintered heap, but the big house in which Hawkenhole lived with his wife, Laura, was unscathed. Chastened by a visit from the nameless, faceless night riders, the doctor and his wife seemed to have reconciled themselves to living in a racially cleansed world they didn't support but were now too frightened to publicly oppose. Sounds about right. There was an outpouring of affection from Forsyth's residents when Dr. John died in 1922, and a notice in the paper said he had been gentle, kind, and considerate to even the most humble who chanced to come in contact with him. Few African Americans were desperate or reckless enough to cross the county line in the years that followed. But on those rare occasions when a black face did appear inside the whites only zone, he or she was usually arrested and charged with a crime. Sounds about right. 2026, these actions are still being done. The only difference is there's no explicit whites only sign. That's it. It's implied. In April of 1914, there were reports that a 32-year-old man named Phillips had been caught trying to rob merchants in Cumming and was followed by his tracks in the mud from Cumming to Beaufort, where he lived. A journalist for the Atlanta Constitution wrote that the Negro was exceedingly clever and claimed that his method was to enter a merchant's house in the stillness of the night and steal the keys to his store from the pockets of his trousers and then to proceed to the store and divest the money drawer of its contents. Bro, seriously, this just sounds nuts. Oh my gosh. This sounds as plausible as the cries of white women talking about some black man just crept into her bed and raped her. Girl, please. After hearing such accusations, Deputy Loomis arrested Phillips at his home in Beaufort, just as he had done with the prisoners in 1912, delivered him to the Fulton Tower in Atlanta jail. It is, of course, within the realm of possibility that Phillips did steal shop keys from sleeping merchants in Cumming, then empty the registers of stores of the town square. But, given Forsyth's reputation as the home of lynchers, arsonists, and shotgun-wielding night riders, it is difficult to believe that a black man intent on robbery would have chosen Cumming as his target. I'm telling you got to be some type of retard. Will Phillips lived in Beaufort, a station on the Southern Railway, which offered its own wealth of money drawers stuffed with cash at the close of each business day. In order to accept contemporary accounts of his arrest, we have to believe that Phillips instead chose to walk 13 miles west to Cumming, across a landscape where only a few years earlier, thousands of blacks had been shot at and threatened, their homes dynamited and burned by white mobs. It seems much more likely that Phillips was simply caught on the wrong side of the county line, and that his arrest was meant to drive home a familiar message. Forsyth was now out of bounds for African Americans. This is how we have acquired a lot of white-only neighborhoods. You just got to pick up a book and read. It seems much more likely that Phillips was simply caught on the wrong side of the county line and that his arrest was meant to drive home a familiar message. Forsyth was now out of bounds for African Americans. Phillips was brought back north to stand trial in May of 1914, and he spent what must have been a terrifying night in the Forsyth County Jail. Baby, we done made it to the end, y'all. I get to eat some. The next morning, he was found guilty on all charges and given the maximum sentence of 40 years on the Georgia chain gang. Bruh. The crazy part about it is that a lot of people, especially black people, talk about how, oh, you don't want to be charged federally. You don't want to go through the federal system. They have a 99% conviction rate. And they overlook the fact that, well, a great portion of that percentage came from raunchy court dealings like this one, where you were going to be found guilty from the moment they realized you were a black man or woman. They weren't going to be fair in any of the dealings. You weren't going to get proper, like, you weren't going to receive due process. If anything, there was cause a spectacle to bring you through the court systems, but you weren't going to get a fair trial. And even with that in existence, people also overlook that majority of conviction rates stems from plea bargains. Amongst black people, historically, when you realize all of the stuff that we've endured, like this, being found guilty, even though there's no legitimate evidence, it's just your peers, well, they supposed to be your peers, but the jury, racist, the system, racist, the judge, prosecutor, the defense, like, you found guilty from the get. So a lot of times, people will just plead guilty for more lenient sentences, which still happens today in 2026. So I say all that to say, understand it fully. Yeah, federal convictions lead in, like, over 90% of them leads into a conviction, or majority federal court cases result in federal convictions. However, those convictions aren't always found, like, the accused is not always found guilty by a court of law, but in fact, they pled guilty, which is what happens a lot now. It doesn't matter where you look. You can look at your local municipality. conviction rates. You can look at New York State, Texas, Maine, Arkansas, California, Virginia. It don't matter what state you look at in the United States of America. Every single state, every single local municipality, which looks at the city, county, town, village, their conviction rates are about the same, damn near close to 100%. And it's not because they're finding people guilty by a court of law. Majority of their conviction rate stems from guilty pleas. People doing the job of the prosecutor. People doing the job, waiving their rights to face to have a fair trial, waiving their rights to face their accusers, waiving their rights to have all the evidence presented before them in discovery. You know what I'm saying? Waiving their rights to question their accuser. I encourage people, don't do the job of these niggas. Don't make it easy. Every time I was arrested, whether I did it or not guilty. And I say heavy in prayer, Jesus, for you know what took place. I'd rather you hold me accountable. You judge me because your judgment is fair. Man is not. These niggas don't even look at this efficiently. They're going to look at me on the outside and make judgments based on what they see on my outside. And by the grace of God, I stand before you arrested multiple times, but convicted 0. Except a violation when I was 17. I will do it out there. I got in a fight in high school. The girl was attempting to bully me, and I don't play them games. And I just walked up into her classroom and beat the dog mess out of her. And then she pressed charges against me for harassment and assault. And I pled guilty because I was told to by my daddy at 17. Because this is what I will tell you. We went to court. I'm 17 years old. I don't know nothing what I know now. Now I look back, I was like, Jesus, you put me on the path of becoming a lawyer. All this, you put me on the path of acquiring not 1, not 2, but 3 degrees in criminal justice and becoming well-versed in this area. It was you. Because the first time I got dragged through there, the second time I got dragged through there, and the third time I got dragged through there, I didn't know what was happening. The first time, they didn't even tell us that we had the right to an attorney. I didn't know. My daddy didn't know. So he wasn't even giving no public defender. My dad was just like, T, just plead guilty. This will speed everything up. The punishment is usually lenient. You know, and it's a violation. It wasn't no misdemeanor or no felony, so I ain't had to do no time. But now every time I apply for something, especially federally, these niggas say, have you ever been arrested and convicted? And then I gotta tell them, I've been arrested and I pled guilty to assault and harassment for beating up a person who attempted to bully me. And she punked out. Because I don't understand how you cause so much mayhem. And then when you get that person to handle you, now all of a sudden you calling your mama and they calling the cops. And I look crazy because the stupid little girls that we mutually dealt with, these heifers came, and that's another thing that got me too, is that these heifers didn't even get in trouble. They left. They weren't even supposed to be in my class. They left their class, came all the way to my class in art in the basement. Told me that this girl was gossiping about me because I ain't had no phone then. This was the early onset of phones. Like the most popular phone at the time was like the first generation iPhone and then Virgin Mobiles, you know. And she did come down there and instigate and tell me this girl talking this, that, and the third. And I ain't never been no talker. So as soon as I heard enough, I was like, where's she at? Oh, Mr. McAvoy class? Okay. And I walked from the basement all the way up to the 3rd floor, walked into that classroom, looked at Mr. McAvoy. He looked at me. Hi, Tierra. Hi, Mr. McAvoy. Kept walking, walked up to that girl, grabbed that girl, and just dragged her across every desk and chair I could find. I ain't even put hands on her because I already knew I would beat the girl up. So I just grabbed her, yoked her up, and just started dragging her everywhere. And I feel like that's why, you know, it ain't look too good in my favor because they like, hold on, you look like a thug. You just walked up in here, you said hi to the teacher, and then started dragging this girl across the desks. But that's why you don't mess with people, because the Bible says no man knows the heart of another man. You don't know the heart of another man. Oh, you thought you was just gonna just lightly, you thought you was just gonna throw some banter my way and I wasn't gonna say or do nothing? You don't know my heart. I'm changed now, though. I'm saved. Let me finish this book, okay? But that I just say all that to say that. Let's continue. Don't take guilty, please. I wanted to circle back to that. Y'all, not guilty. Not guilty. Actually, before I finish this book, I do want to finish this thought. The reason why I encourage not guilty, please, right? Y'all can look at your local municipalities. Like I tell y'all, I can show you better than I can tell you. I can show you my local municipality, right? I'm in Rochester, New York. So Rochester City Court judges. It's going to show us all the judges that we have in our city court. Then I'm going to show y'all Monroe County. Get a spacer now. I forget what the court is called. Judges. So you can see the county and the Supreme Court judge. Look at this. This is Supreme Court and County Court. And the positions is held by the same motherfucking people. Look at this. Now, the reason why I want to show you this, these two were my most recent judges, and both of these niggas, they trash. This one subjected me to a motherfucking unlawful strip search, abusing his power. This fathead nigga, he ain't show his face, but I'll show you. I can't stand that dude. Fathead nigga. He straight up told me, I believe you did what you accused of because of the charges. I don't have no conviction. Ain't no evidence against me. This fathead nigga right here, I think this is daddy. But this fathead nigga right, racist. Oh my gosh, that nigga racist. So, trust me, reading from books like this, I can attest to it. I done dealt with some raggedy prosecutors, public defenders. I done went through public defenders and then got thrown into conflict defenders because they throw you in there when you got conflict of interest with the public defender. They like, well, we can't give her a public defender because she done bumped head with all the public defenders. So then they got me a conflict defender, which is a community lawyer that helps them when they can't use the public defenders that they got on payroll. When I tell you, I know so many raggedy stuff about these. I could go on and on, but I ain't gonna hold y'all there. But the reason why I want to show you this, we're gonna start with city court, okay? Just so y'all can look at it. And 3, 4, 6, 10. 3, 6, 10. We got 10 city court judges in Rochester. Now let me show y'all Rochester's population size. We got about 210,000 people. You see what I'm saying? I don't like that overview thing, but we got about 210,000 people. We'll just use that for the time being. 210,000 people in Rochester. Right? 210,000 people residing in the city of Rochester. And we got 10 judges in our city court. Now, because I love math, let me tell you this. About 1% of your population would be the amount of court cases that gets funneled through your locale, your municipality. So In Rochester, where's my calculator? In Rochester, we got about 210,000 people, right? And then you multiply that by 1%. That gives us about 2,100 court cases that gets funneled through the city of Rochester. 2,100. Public defenders are state-provided lawyers. So they are on government tabs, payroll, all that jazz, right? One, this is why I tell y'all, don't do their job. Because you helping everybody out. You helping prosecutors, the judges, the jury, the motherfucking defense attorney. You doing everybody's job, taking a guilty plea. Make these niggas work. That's what they getting paid for, ain't it? A public defender. I'm sharing this information from my education, okay? Remember, associates, bachelors, masters, all in criminal justice, okay? So I have the practical sense, the hands-on, I know everything about it. On top of now I'm getting to the point where now I'm researching it. I am pursuing a master's or a PhD as well. I don't think it's going to be in criminal justice. I'm not sure yet. But y'all see, education is key. 2,100 court cases go before the courts. And I'm going to finish this little paragraph. And we're going to be out of here because I got to eat. 2,100 cases goes before our courts. We got 10 judges. 10 of these hoes are judges, man. Public defenders, they ain't much more than them. Have you ever been in your local public defender's office? It ain't that many of them. One public defender by themselves oversee at least minimum 100 cases by themselves. That's minimum. Then you could take into consideration they on government payroll, so these niggas ain't getting paid what a prestigious private law firm is getting paid. These niggas is getting paid pennies. I literally had my public defender, Brittany. I will never forget that girl. Brittany. Straight up told me to my face, I don't get paid enough for this. She wanted to tell me how she was going to do my case. And I'm telling her, girl, this is my life. I'm the one that, if convicted, will have to go to motherfucking jail or prison. Not you. Me. Nigga, I'm not listening to you. You going to do what I say. You work for me, nigga. I don't care if I'm paying you directly or not. It's my life. Her retort, I don't get paid enough for this. I was 5 seconds away from snatching that girl up out her seat, man. Man, I tell you, I could sit here and just run through the stories, but I encourage y'all to go through my past videos. Y'all see stories of me talking about my criminal justice endeavors. You hear me tell about the stories of me being arrested. I got all that out there. All that out there. Yes. Go back and let's do it. 10 judges. 2,100 cases. How can you expect these people to do their job efficiently, to look at your case in detail and make sound judgments when it's 10 judges sharing the workload of about 2,100 cases? That applies to prosecutors, public defenders. That's why if you ever go to court, that junk functions like an assembly line. It's so embarrassing. You go to court, everybody sitting in there hearing your business. You could be motherfucking accused of like child rape. Embarrassing as hell. You could be accused of motherfucking welfare fraud. And then ain't even do it. But everybody and their mama hears it because they process everybody together. And then they just, how do you plead? Guilty, guilty, okay, get out of here. How do you plead? Guilty, guilty, okay. And then the next time you come, and then this the next part of your thing. But you could see and hear other people's stuff. Literally anybody could just walk up into your cases. They're open to the public. I've done sat in so many court cases, my own included. Some mostly for school, but I started catching up with my own stuff, you know? 2,100 cases roughly goes before The city court, 10 judges are supposed to oversee it, and you expect them to efficiently do their job, to care about the intricacies of your case. And then you expect the same thing with the prosecutor, the public defender. You sharing your public defender with at least 99 other people. You don't know how many times I have repeated the same information to my public defenders because these niggas never cracked open my files. And they don't listen to me when I speak. And the same, look at this. This is Supreme Court. Because I know people don't know how the judge, every state has a Supreme Court. But that's how, when they like, oh, Supreme Court, so-and-so, that's how they get stuff. You know, it's the top, the highest court within that state. You see what I'm saying? Now, this one has a little bit more. But you got to remember, Supreme Court. So that's Monroe County. They cover the entire county of Rochester. So we'll look at that. Monroe County population. New York population. Look at that. Almost 1 million people living in Monroe County, New York. 759.4. Bro, I read that as 1 million. My bad, y'all. 759,000. My bad, y'all. I said 1 million. 759. That's more people than in Rochester. The more than double. And look at this. How many we got? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 22. 22 judges. Supreme Court judges that is supposed to oversee every mother freaking county court case. Now let's do the math for that. We got 759. 759,000 times 1%. Shy of 8,000 court cases goes before this county Supreme Court. How do you expect these people to efficiently do their job? Huh? And then the county judges, this is when your stuff goes into county court. We're not talking about Supreme Court. This is county. Supreme Court. County. Bruh. I don't even know. This is only 6 of them. Look at it. For this many people. With potentially this many cases. 6. Now imagine how many lawyers they got, how many public defenders and prosecutors they got. You expect these niggas to officially do their job? Do not do their job. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. The reason why I brought it up, they are underpopulated in manpower. They don't have enough people. My lawyer told me herself, I don't get paid enough for this. They don't have proper funding. Nobody likes working for the government because the government doesn't pay well as if you was working for like a private firm. You on that government payroll, that government salary, which is very dependent off of tax dollars. So that thing could, you understand what I'm saying? It just depends on the climate and who try to appease to who. I tell people all the time, you want to dismantle the systems, especially the criminal justice system? Take your case to trial. If every person in that has an open case took their cases to trial, it will, I'm telling you, the courts will fold. They will crumble. They will literally fall apart because they don't have the manpower and they don't have the funding. They don't. And then our constitutional rights states that we have the right to a speedy trial. If everybody fights their stuff, majority court cases are won by pleas. Over 90% of them. There's a very small percentage of court cases, less than 5% of them, that actually goes to trial. And of that 5%, less than 2% of them are actually found guilty by a court of law. So that means majority of the people that they fight and they push to take their case to trial, majority of them are acquitted. Their cases are dismissed. And for many reasons. A lot of it has to do with poor investigatory work on the behalf of the police. They find constitutional violations. It happened with me. Literally, all my cases was either dismissed or acquitted. I even had one of my court cases. It had a I was about to say a hang jury. It's not a hang jury. What the freak is it? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It happened with Young Thug's case, and then he ended up taking a guilty plea. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It'll come back to me. But every single one of my cases, I fought them, and I fought them because they found, even though they was trying to hem me up for all types of stuff, like I was accused of endangering an elderly. My first offense, well, second offense. The first one, I was accused of harassment and assault for beating up this girl who attempted to bully me in high school and failed. The second one was endangering an elderly because some old guy, when I'm out, I think it was Gaslight District or Red Light District, something like that, in San Diego in 2013. I'm drunk as hell. Everybody drunk as hell. This old dude came up to me and approached me. I guess trying to holler at something. I slapped him. And he caused a scene. It was like, ah, she slapped me. I got pulled over by some bicycle cops and arrested by bicycle cops. And I ain't plead guilty or nothing. They had me sitting up in jail for 12 hours in San Diego County Jail with the most racist jailers ever. Stupid bras. Didn't even want to tell me what they arrested me for. Like, nigga, how you just gonna scoop me up out of the free world and then don't even want to tell me what you got me in here for? When you know when you arrested me, I was like blackout, pissy drunk. Stupid. But anyways, they had me up in there for 12 hours just to go to court and find out, hey, there was no charges filed against you, so your case just fell apart. When I tell you I wasted money on lawyers and all this, man, go back and look at my old stuff. But this is why I tell y'all. Then more recently, I was charged with menacing a deadly weapon, accused of trying to intimidate somebody with my Colt 45. That's what I was accused of. And the police came in there with all this excessive force and everything. And they tried to arrest me. They tried to revoke my pistol permit, take my firearms, everything. I got all that back. And the charges against me didn't come to fruition. In fact, I get my trial. Mistrial. That's what the freak it was. That's why I said that nigga he was stupid for motherfucker taking a guilty plea. No, with mistrials, you don't take no guilty plea. That's their last resort to get you hung because they ain't got nothing. If he ain't take no guilty plea, that case would have fell apart because it happened to me. So they take me in there, right? It's the day of my trial. I'm accused of menacing with a deadly weapon. I'm like, I know this ain't going nowhere because I am knowledgeable. When I got arrested, I know these niggas, my family's recording, they recording. I'm literally heard and seen nobody on camera footage asking these niggas, am I under arrest? No. So what is you touching me for? But then they charged me menacing with a deadly weapon, obstructing government administration, and resisting arrest. But I wasn't under arrest, so how can I resist something that I'm not under? So the resisting an arrest, all of them things pretty much fell apart because they was banking on the menacing with a deadly weapon to stick around. But then my lawyer, my public defender, failed to prepare for the case because she was so gung-ho. She was adamant that, oh, this isn't going to go to trial because your accusers are gangbangers and they got a nasty record and you look great on paper. You're a veteran. You're a homeowner. You just, oh my gosh, you look outstanding on paper. They're not going to do anything. get to trial, they still going for it because they know they need that guilty conviction because without a guilty conviction, I could sue Rochester Police Department, which is what happened. So they went out of their way to get that guilty plea or that conviction. Ain't nothing come from it. I mother freaking at the thing. She ain't even prepared. So I held it up. I'm looking at the jewelry and everything. They got this damn near all white jewelry. The only black person up there is this old black man. Mind you, at the time I'm like 26. Old people perceptions of young people. Baby, I'm not black man. That black man had my back. I ain't gonna hold you. Hell no. I don't look at black people and be like, oh, I'm safe. Oh. Y'all heard of Sambo, Uncle Ruckus, the nigga on Django that Samuel L. Jackson played? Nah, bro. Put none of my faith in man. Curses any man who puts his trust in man. That's what the Bible says. Put all my trust and faith in Jesus. But anyways, so I tell him, I'm like, no, I need to fire my lawyer because today is the trial. This lady ain't even prepared for the trial. She was banking that these people weren't even going to show up, and bam, here they are. This lady even told me before I fired her, she was like, I was like, girl, you ain't even prepared for this? What kind of, you ain't got no thing? You ain't got no defense? And she was like, it's okay. If you're found guilty, you could just appeal. I became 2 milliseconds away from snatching this chick up at this point. This is the same broad that told me she don't get paid enough for this, bruh. So this is what I can tell you. So anyways, because all of this happened after they had already presented their opening statements, they had mentioned the gun and all this other stuff. And because of my raggedy lawyer, I thank God for that raggedy lady, because they eventually ordered a mistrial, or not a mistrial. Is it a mistrial? I just said it in pertaining to, oh boy, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on it. But yeah, they was like mistrial. Then they said they were going to bring me back, but now they had, because they presented the weapon in the opening statements, and they see that this unconstitutional, like I have inefficient counsel. I'm supposed to have efficient counsel. This lady is inefficient. She sucks. So because of that mistrial, they was like, we can't do anything with this. Now we got to throw out the menacing with a deadly weapon case because of this. They couldn't go forward with that thing. So then they was like, okay, well, the only thing we have left is the OGA, obstructing government administration, which they didn't explicitly charge me with resisting arrest. They tried to get the resisting arrest under the obstructing government administration. But then that charge fell apart, which made the whole case fall apart, because they was like, you know what? We was really dependent on this menacing with a deadly weapon, especially because she had 2 charges. They accused me of pointing my weapon in the face of 2 different people and trying to intimidate them with it. And so they was like, well, damn, without the menacing with a deadly weapon, there's no way we gonna get her convicted on an obstructing government administration, because one, in New York State, it is ruled by law that they can't hem you up with an obstructing government administration unless there is physical interference. But because I am heard and seen on the body camera, the police body camera footage, asking them, am I under arrest? And these niggas said, no. Boom, case fell apart. They was like, we ain't got no case. This is why I tell y'all, fight your junk. It took me 17 months to fight. But baby, I stand before you. Well, I sit before you with no conviction. Except the one I pled guilty to. If I ain't never pled guilty to that, I would have not had nothing. Fight it. Fight it. Because less than 2% of the cases that are brought before courts are actually found guilty in court of law. And it's a very small percentage. So, for example, what number we had? It was like 2,100 for city court cases, right? So if 2,100 cases go before the judge, 2,100 cases go before a judge, but only 5% of them actually goes to trial. So that's 0.05. 0.053. No, dude. 21 times. There we go. It's about 105 cases that goes there. But out of that 105 cases, only 2% of them are actually found guilty by a court of law. You see? Out of all the cases that goes before, roughly, and this is a rough estimate, of all the cases, of 2,100 cases that go before the courts, maybe 2 of them are actually found guilty by the court of law. So out of that 5% that goes before the judges, 105, only roughly 2 of them are found guilty by a court of law. That means the other 98% court cases are dismissed, motherfreaking dropped, acquitted. You see what I'm saying? You have a greater chance, you know, for this resorting in your. I'm over here pushing buttons like y'all can see. Y'all can see nothing. But 21 times 0.5, okay? Out of 2,100 court cases, 5% of them actually goes to trial. So that's 105 cases out of 2,100 cases that goes to trial. Of that 105 cases, only 2% of them actually are found guilty by a court of law. So that means out of 2,100 cases total, roughly 2 of them are actually found guilty by a court of law. That means the other 90%, 90+%, they're found guilty by plea bargains, where there's a good about 7%, which is majority of the cases that went to trial, they actually fall apart. They're not found guilty. You see what I'm saying? So you got a greater chance. Look at this. Flood them. All I'm telling you is to flood the criminal justice system, because you will literally make them fall apart. They can't handle you. They can't. I'm telling you, I'd have been arrested and accused, oh gosh, 3 full times? And aside from the one time I pled guilty, I ain't got no convictions, okay? That ought to tell you something. Walk by faith, not by sight. All right, we're going to finish these last 2 paragraphs, and I'm going to let y'all go on about your business, because I know my wife probably upset. It's 10:50. Good Jesus. All right. A similar case was recorded in October of 1915 when a black man named Joe Smith was accused of burglary in Cumming. According to the papers, a warrant was issued for his arrest, and Sheriff W.W. Reed of Cumming was appointed to bring back Smith, who is said to be in Lien County. Lien County lay just across Georgia's southern border with Florida, but Bill Reed made the long journey anyway. Whatever had tempted Smith to trespass into the white man's county of Forsyth, the arm of the law was long enough to reach him even 300 miles away. Prosecution like these helped cement Forsyth's reputation as a bastion of white supremacy in Georgia's most racist county. Let me say that again. Prosecutions like these helped cement Forsyth's reputation as a bastion of white supremacy in Georgia's most racist county. While some of the African-American residents who returned may have come back seeking revenge, it seems far more likely that they were simply trying to recover their own lost and stolen possessions, whether livestock, furniture, farm equipment, or some other valuable left behind, in the rush to escape the night riders. However, briefly and however stealthily they tried to return, it was now clear that a black man could be arrested for simply being in Forsyth County, which is kind of what people says now. You get arrested for just being black, just existing. Well, yeah, guys, that's it for chapter 13, y'all. We made it. We made it. I gotta go downstairs. I gotta go eat. I gotta hang out with my wife. I've been sitting here for almost 3 hours. Oh no, 3 hours and 28 minutes. Good Jesus Christ. Lord, you're so good. But I hope y'all learned something from this. I will not make the rest of these readings this long. I'm sorry, y'all. I'll just be hella chatty and be hella informational. I'll try to show you better than I can tell you. So, yeah, I just love all y'all. God bless. Peace, man. Y'all be easy out there. And make sure y'all catch up. Read this other, but look at the other videos. Check the description. You know what I'm saying? Watch the previous chapters be read. Look at my other content because you learned a lot about me. You know? And not just me, but in the process of getting to know me, you learned a lot about society through my experiences. I love you. God bless and peace.